Chapter 1760. Zilong pondered for a while before replying. The immortal source liquid is the condensation of the essence of the immortal tree's leaves over countless years. For the immortal source liquid, regrowing a severed limb is nothing more than a waste of talent. It is a natural pills capable of bringing one back from the dead. Bringing one back from the dead. Zidong's face was filled with shock. If this trivial dew has such a miraculous effect, then the immortal tree itself. If I can obtain the immortal tree and refine it, I can obtain an immortal and indestructible body and live as long as the heavens themselves. What? Zidong was truly shocked this time. Even as the young master of Purple Star, he could not help feeling shocked, unable to believe these words if they were not coming from his father's mouth. If I can obtain an endless lifespan, then your father will achieve something unprecedented. At that time, I will surpass the origin king realm and peer into the mysteries of the realm of the great emperors. When Zilong said this, his whole body was filled with excitement and fanaticism. Zidong stared at his father in a daze. He had not seen such an expression on his father's face for a long time, so he could imagine how great the temptation of the immortal tree was to his father. Father, is this information only known to our Purple Star? Zidong asked again. No. Zilong shook his head, a look of dread appearing on his face. I am not certain about others, but Hengluo Chamber of Commerce definitely knows about the existence of the immortal tree because 2,000 years ago, your great-uncle and the previous president of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce entered together. So, this time, that old fart Enai Guang is likely also eyeing the immortal tree. Zidong could not help but frown as he asked suspiciously, if that's the case, why don't you gather more masters? Zilong faintly smiled. This kind of matter isn't something that can be handled with more people. Moreover, there is only one immortal tree. When the time comes, what if we succeed? Who will obtain it? In front of such a supreme treasure, only you can trust yourself, everyone else is your enemy. Zidong pondered for a moment before nodding. This child understands. Good, you are still young. There's still a long way to go. Father brought you here this time to temper you and expose you to some unimaginable dangers as soon as possible. This will be of great benefit to your future growth. I hope you won't disappoint me. This child will do his best. Zidong said solemnly. As the sect master of Purple Star, Zilong had countless children, but the one he favored the most was still Zidong. Among his countless children, only this child stood out. Of course, he had to raise him well. Zidong was also well aware of this, so he had worked even harder these past few years, not daring to slack off in his cultivation. Entering the severed world this time was extremely dangerous, but it was also a good test. As long as he passed this test, his position in Purple Star would be unshakable from now on. Zidong secretly clenched his fists and decided to perform well this time. At the same time, somewhere far away, Yang Kai's group of 4, led by Enai Guang, was advancing through the severed world. Along the way, they did not encounter any great dangers. The exiled grounds did not seem to live up to its name either. However, Enai Guang took out something that Yang Kai was particularly interested in. It was an artifact similar to a communication artifact, but it was somewhat different because there was a needle-like object in the center of this artifact. Enai Guang had taken it out 2 hours ago. He had been holding it in his hand all this time, shaking it from side to side from time to time. As it shook, the needle would occasionally undergo some subtle changes. Every time this happened, Enai Guang would change direction and move in a different direction. Luo Lan was confused by this sight, not knowing what kind of magical effect this artifact had. She secretly guessed that this thing was probably able to avoid some kind of danger, but this was related to someone else's privacy, so she didn't ask and simply kept it to herself. However, Yang Kai was quite surprised. Because he found that this artifact could actually detect the location of some hidden void cracks. Whenever the needle on this artifact pointed in a certain direction, Yang Kai could feel obscure space force fluctuations from that direction, but Enai Guang was always able to avoid them in advance. This was obviously a special artifact that had been refined to deal with entering the severed world. The person who had refined it had most likely cultivated the Tao of space. Yang Kai secretly guessed. After all, Hengluo Chamber of Commerce was a big force with many talented people, so it was only natural that some of them had cultivated the Tao of space. However, Yang Kai was keenly able to infer from the reaction of this artifact that its creator's attainments in the Tao of space were far inferior to his own. Because this artifact could not detect all hidden void cracks, even if there were some void cracks several dozen meters away from the group, it would not respond, but Yang Kai could clearly perceive them. Every time this happened, he would be on tenterhooks, afraid that Ni Guang would rush over. Fortunately, they had not encountered any danger along the way, so Yang Kai did not need to expose his secret to remind Ni Guang to change their route. From time to time, there would be rips in the void, visible to the naked eye. This kind of thing was like a scar in the sky, forever hanging above the void, adding a dangerous atmosphere to the severed world. As they moved forward, whether it was obvious or hidden void cracks, the number of them increased. Yang Kai and the others even saw a heavenly chasm-like crack in the void, and from that crack came a terrifying and strange fluctuation. No one knew what was on the other side of that crack. When he saw this crack, Yang Kai's face was filled with eagerness. He clearly felt that this huge void crack was likely to contain what he needed, the space spirit crystal that had been nurtured in the void, or the insight into the Tao of space that he longed for. He felt that if he rushed in, he would definitely reap great benefits. Unfortunately, he was now acting with Ni Guang and the others, so he did not rashly leave the group and could only pass by this crack. In any case, there were many such opportunities in the severed world, so there was no need to rush. Ni Guang, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and turned his head in a certain direction, letting out a cry of surprise. Following the direction he was looking, the other three immediately saw a person lying on the ground 1,000 meters away. "This is..." Luolan whispered, "This person's clothes seem a bit familiar. Is he one of the people who came in with us before?" "It seems so." Ni Guang's expression became solemn as he released his divine sense to investigate, his expression changing slightly, but he seems to be dead. Luolan's pretty face paled. Among the cultivator who entered the severed world before, except for Yang Kai, Shui Yu, and Zidong, the rest were all origin kings, none of them worse than her. But after just a few hours, she actually found a corpse here. It was difficult to imagine what kind of attack this person had suffered. With his powerful origin king realm cultivation, he had actually died here. What's more, from the looks of the surroundings, this person had not experienced any kind of battle at all. It was as if he had been ambushed and killed instantly by something powerful. If she had been in his shoes, Luolan felt that her fate would not have been any better. She began to celebrate her good luck. "Should we go and take a look?" Shui Yu pondered for a moment before pointing in the direction of the corpse. "There seems to be something next to his body." There was no need for her to remind them, as everyone noticed that there was indeed something next to this origin king realm master's corpse. It was a small flower that resembled a coxcomb that grew straight out of the ground. Even from 1,000 meters away, everyone could smell a fragrant scent drifting over from it. This aura made people feel relaxed and happy, and it could not help but ease the tension in everyone's hearts. "What kind of spirit grass is this? Do any of you recognize it?" Ni Guang turned his head and asked. Luolan shook her head awkwardly while Shui Yu also expressed that she did not know. Even the origin king-grade alchemist, Yang Kai, was confused. He had never seen this kind of spirit flower before. Logically speaking, the true alchemy enlightenment scripture he obtained in the Emperor Garden not only contained countless lost pill recipes but also detailed records of countless exotic flowers and herbs. It could be said that the scripture contained almost everything. In terms of understanding of herbs, Yang Kai was confident that he was not inferior to anyone in the Star Territory. However, Yang Kai had not seen any similar records in the true alchemy enlightenment scripture. Ni Guang frowned and pondered for a moment before saying, "I'll go take a look, all of you stay here and don't move." Yang Kai was confident in his ability and didn't want to give up on this opportunity. Regardless of what kind of spirit grass this spirit flower was, at least there was an origin king realm master's corpse nearby. As long as he could obtain his space ring, it would be a good harvest. "Do you want this mistress to go with you?" Luolan asked. Ni Guang glanced at her and nodded. "Then you be careful." "This mistress will," Luolan responded with a smile before she and Ni Guang slowly approached the corpse. Yang Kai and Shui Yu stood in place, nervously paying attention to the situation. The two quickly closed the distance of more than 1,000 meters, but to everyone's surprise, even when Ni Guang and Luolan approached the corpse, there was no danger. Ni Guang had a puzzled look on his face. He lowered his head to look at the corpse and exclaimed in a low voice, "This man was killed by a sneak attack from behind. There are 2 bite marks on the back of his neck. It seems to be a snake-type demon beast, and it's highly poisonous." Luolan nodded as she also noticed this. Because this corpse was in a face-down position, the situation on the back of his neck was clear at a glance. It was easy to imagine that this person had been caught off guard and bitten on the back of his neck, causing him to fall to the ground and die immediately. This was simply a lethal poison that could kill at the sight of blood. Even an Origin King would not be able to resist it. "Elder Luo, I'll have to trouble you to take this corpse with you. I'll pick up that spirit flower," Ni Guang ordered. "Okay." Luolan nodded, not taking this matter lightly. Instead of directly touching the corpse with her hand, she sent out a wisp of Saint Qi to wrap it up and quickly withdraw. Chapter 1761. Luolan's movements were careful and swift. Without knowing what kind of dangers were hidden in that place, she didn't dare to stay there for long. While Luolan wrapped up the Origin King Realm Master's corpse and retreated, Ni Guang also reached out to grab the coxcomb-like spirit flower. But at that moment, a sudden change occurred. Somewhere behind Ni Guang, the originally flat ground suddenly bulged up and a flat, triangular snake head poked out from the ground, aimed towards Ni Guang's neck, and launched a lightning-fast attack. The whole process was too fast for the eyes to take in, and there were no signs at all. When the snake head drilled out of the ground and attacked Ni Guang, Shui Yu's beautiful face turned pale as she cried out in alarm, "Uncle Ni, be careful." As soon as her voice fell, the snake head bit down on Ni Guang's neck. Shui Yu's face changed drastically. Seeing this scene, how could she not understand how the Origin King Realm Master from before had died? Clearly, just like Ni Guang, the moment his attention was attracted by the coxcomb-like spirit flower, the snake monster beast hiding behind him had launched a fatal sneak attack. She did not know if Ni Guang could cope. After all, judging from the current situation, Ni Guang had also been caught. However, Ni Guang was Ni Guang after all. Not to mention his profound cultivation, how could he not be prepared when he knew that this place was dangerous? As such, while preparing to collect the spirit flower, Ni Guang had been secretly vigilant to guard against the unexpected, paying particular attention to protecting the back of his neck. This sneak attack was destined to fail. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, and a halo of energy suddenly appeared around Ni Guang's neck. Under this attack, Ni Guang's entire body seemed to have been hit by a powerful force, and he was suddenly sent flying forward. Letting out a low shout, Ni Guang forcibly twisted his body mid-air and waved his hand behind him, not forgetting to grab the spirit flower with his other hand. The backhand strike of a second-order Origin King was not to be underestimated. The ferocious force knocked the snake's head back, and it was unable to attack again. However, the moment Ni Guang grabbed the spirit flower, his expression changed drastically. He felt a different tactile sensation from the spirit flower. It was definitely not the feeling of gathering spirit herbs. Instead, it was as if he had grabbed onto something cold and slippery, as if he had grabbed onto something alive. He decisively let go. Right at this moment, the spirit flower that was exuding a sweet fragrance suddenly changed, and it suddenly emerged from the ground. The entire flower emitted a green light and pierced into Ni Guang's palm. In an instant, that area was filled with sand and stones, and from time to time, Ni Guang's cold snort and the hissing sound of a spirit snake hissing could be heard. A moment later, Ni Guang jumped out of the battle circle and stood in the air. His expression was extremely solemn. As for Yang Kai and the others, when they looked over, they were also surprised. As the dust settled, they finally understood what the trap in front of them was all about. At the place where the coxcomb-like spirit flower used to be, there was no longer any spirit flower. There was only an earth-yellow demon snake that was about 30 feet long and as thick as an infant's arm. It was coiled up. It was constantly flicking its forked tongue. This monster snake did not give off the slightest discernible aura. If one did not look at it with the naked eye, they would not be able to discover its existence at all. It was as if it was not a living creature. On its tail, there was a coxcomb-like sarcoma. The spirit flower that everyone had seen before was actually this monster hiding its body underground while leaving its tail above the ground. This was an illusion created by it. Anyone who tried to touch the spirit flower was bound to be attacked by it. Tail-crowned snake. Ni Guang's eyes lit up as he called out the name of this monster beast. Fortunately, he was knowledgeable and held a high position in Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce, allowing him to come into contact with many ancient books. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to recognize this strange monster beast that had only existed for a very long time. Tail-crowned snake. Luo Lan frowned. Looking at Ni Guang with some admiration, she said, "This mistress has never heard of so many extinct existences in the severed world." The black shadow they had encountered in the underground gully before was also unknown to them, only feeling that it was somewhat similar to a yin soul. However, this tail-crowned snake was completely different. The other three people had never even heard of it before. The severed world opened up for them like a strange world that they had never come into contact with before. Ni Guang grinned, "Don't worry, although the tail-crowned snake is dangerous, its strength isn't very high. Its strength lies in its ability to conceal itself and launch sneak attacks. Since its sneak attack failed, it can only serve as this old master's prey." Saying so, he rushed straight towards the tail-crowned snake. He didn't use any powerful killing moves, he just approached the tail-crowned snake, his hands like claws, and started to fight with the tail-crowned snake. Yang Kai observed silently and found that this monster beast only had a strength of around the 9th order. In front of Ni Guang, such a creature naturally couldn't pose any threat. Even though it possessed an ancient bloodline, after 10 breaths of time, the tail-crowned snake that had leapt up from the ground and was about to bite Ni Guang was caught by him. Immediately, Ni Guang flicked his wrist like a whip and poured his Saint Chi fiercely into the snake's body. Within the long body of the tail-crowned snake, a series of crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Then, its straight body fell limply to the ground, directly becoming a corpse. Ni Guang stretched out his hand and flicked his finger towards the snake's belly, pulling out an oval-shaped, long and sized, green snake gallbladder, opening his mouth and swallowing it before letting out a cheerful laugh. Yang Kai didn't know what kind of magical effects the tail-crowned snake's gallbladder had, but seeing Ni Guang's happy expression, it was likely to be of great benefit to him. After doing all this, Ni Guang casually threw the tail-crowned snake's body to the side and said lightly, "This monster beast does not have a monster core. The most valuable thing on its body is its gallbladder. In ancient times, if a cultivator took it for a long time, it was said that they would be immune to hundreds of poisons. Unfortunately, there is only one, but it's better than nothing." Saying so, he walked back to the corpse Luo Lan had picked up, lowered his head, and sighed, "Ha, it really is Tong Lei." He was obviously referring to the name of the corpse in front of him. "Does Senior Ni know him?" Luo Lan asked. Ni Guang nodded slightly, "We've met once. Back then, he made a deal with this old master, but that was many years ago. I never expected that he would actually die in the mouth of a 9th order monster beast. In this kind of place, one really can't be careless. In the outside world, how could an Origin King Realm Master die under the attack of a 9th order monster beast? A 9th order monster beast was equivalent to an Origin returning realm cultivator. Once an Origin King entered the territory of an Origin King, a 9th order monster beast would not even be able to approach, but in this severed world, a 9th order monster beast could not be underestimated. "Shui Yu, take off this ring," Ni Guang ordered lightly. Shui Yu nodded, bent down, and took off the space ring of the Origin King named Tong Lei, not even bothering to check what was inside before putting it away. Yang Kai and Luo Lan did not say anything. Yang Kai's strength was too low and he had not contributed much in this matter, so naturally, he was not qualified to get a share of the spoils. As for Luo Lan, Ni Guang had already informed her before that even if she followed him, he could not guarantee that she would gain anything, so Luo Lan could not blame him for his current actions. "Let's go, we must be careful from now on. Don't approach anything you find strange," Ni Guang exhorted before preparing to leave. "Everyone, please wait a moment." Yang Kai suddenly seemed to think of something and, while speaking, stretched out his hand and flicked a golden blood thread towards the tail-crowned snake's corpse on the ground. The three of them stood in place and watched this scene strangely, not knowing what Yang Kai was going to do. The golden blood thread instantly sank into the tail-crowned snake's body, and immediately afterwards, a squirming sound came from inside. The tail-crowned snake's corpse seemed to have been sucked dry by something, and its flesh quickly withered, leaving behind only its skin. A moment later, the golden blood thread exuding a golden and red light returned to Yang Kai's hand. Ni Guang looked at the golden blood thread in Yang Kai's hand thoughtfully and asked in surprise, "Boy, is this thing a secret technique, or an artifact?" He felt a strange fluctuation from the golden blood thread. The golden blood thread looked like an artifact, but it exuded an extremely rich vitality, as if it was alive, giving it an extremely strange appearance. "It's something between a secret technique and an artifact," Yang Kai smiled lightly and explained casually. The golden blood thread was condensed from the essence of his own golden blood. Strictly speaking, it was a kind of secret technique, but it also had the properties of an artifact and could be retracted and used repeatedly, making it difficult to define. Strange. Ni Guang slowly shook his head. He had lived for so many years but had never seen such a strange secret technique, but the world was so big that nothing was too strange, so he didn't delve too deeply into it. After all, although this golden blood thread looked powerful, it couldn't cause him any harm. Thinking about it for a moment, he asked, "Since this thing can absorb the essence of the tail-crowned snake's flesh, what kind of changes can it undergo?" "It can." Yang Kai grinned, and with a single thought, the golden blood thread wrapped around his hand suddenly twisted and transformed into the appearance of a tail-crowned snake. The tail-crowned snake transformed from the golden blood thread was exactly the same as the one everyone had seen before, the only difference being its color. A living tail-crowned snake was yellow in color, but the one in Yang Kai's hand was a mixture of gold and red. "You can actually mimic it." Ni Guang's eyes lit up. "Could it be that your secret technique is now equivalent to a real tail-crowned snake?" "Something like that," Yang Kai nodded, no longer showing off, instead taking back his golden blood thread. Everything he was doing was within the scope of the golden blood thread's transformation technique, the blood beast. A golden blood thread could absorb the essence of a monster beast and transform into the appearance of that monster beast when it was alive. This monster beast was an extremely powerful secret technique. The cultivator who created the golden blood thread secret technique was a genius, but unfortunately, whether it was him or the later cultivator of Demon Blood Temple, none of them were able to carry forward this secret technique because they were unable to condense too many blood threads in their bodies. Even the beautiful temple master of Demon Blood Temple, after exhausting all of her strength and not hesitating to use yang to supplement her yin, had only been able to condense 2 demon blood threads in her body. Chapter 1762. Because of these various reasons, the original version of the golden blood thread secret technique, the demon blood thread secret technique, was very difficult to display in Demon Blood Temple. In particular, its many transformations required the support of a massive number of blood threads. No one in Demon Blood Temple could meet this requirement. It could be said that the cultivator who created this secret technique had only put forward a beautiful idea but was unable to truly perfect it. But Yang Kai was different. This secret technique was simply tailor-made for him. In a sense, as long as Yang Kai had enough golden blood in his body, he could display the full potential of the golden blood thread secret technique to a level that even its creator could not estimate. As for the blood beast secret technique, Yang Kai had only condensed 2 so far. He had condensed them after killing the 2 thunder flame flying lizards of young Master Demonic Eye on Monster Star. The thunder flame flying lizards were just 9th order monster beast and couldn't play much of a role for the current Yang Kai, so he had never used them in battle. Only when the number of blood beasts reached a certain level could they cause considerable damage. 1 or 2 9th order monster beast blood beasts would definitely not pose a threat to an Origin King, but if there were dozens or hundreds of them, even an Origin King would have to avoid them. 9th order monster beasts were not easy to find, and Yang Kai had never paid much attention to condensing blood beasts, but in this severed world, he felt that this was a relatively easy task. This place was simply a paradise for high-order monster beasts, and all of them had ancient bloodlines, making it the best place to condense blood beasts. As such, Yang Kai did not avoid suspicion and directly used his golden blood threads to condense blood beasts. In any case, this was not his biggest trump card, so it didn't matter if it was exposed. Seeing that Yang Kai had taken care of everything properly, Ni Guang nodded again and did not say anything, simply taking out the artifact that could detect void cracks and leading the way. The severed world was filled with dangers, but it was also filled with opportunities. There were many extinct spirit flowers and rare grasses here, as well as countless ancient monster beasts that had long been lost in the long river of history. Under the nourishment of the special world principles of the severed world, they continued to reproduce and survive. Although there were 2 third-order origin returning realm masters in this group of 4, lowering the average combat power of the team, overall, the strength of Yang Kai's group was unquestionable. Along the way to the Medicine Valley, there were occasional gains. Just as Yang Kai had expected, there were all kinds of high-level monster beast here. Although Yang Kai dared not say that 9th stage monster beast could be found everywhere, he had not seen one below 8th stage since he entered. The 4 of them even encountered 2 10th grade monster beast. These 2 10th grade monster beast emitted an extremely powerful aura. Even Ni Guang was afraid of one of them and could only avoid it from afar. They didn't dare to provoke it rashly, but the other one met with great misfortune, and was killed by the 4 of them together. Every monster beast that was killed had valuable materials on it, such as its monster core, gallbladder, claws, and teeth. All of these materials were taken away by Ni Guang and Shui Yu. After all, a 9th or 10th grade monster beast's body was already very valuable, so there was no reason to let it go. Luo Lan also received some monster beast materials as spoils of war. Yang Kai, on the other hand, didn't ask for anything else, just constantly using his golden blood threads to absorb the essence of the monster beast's flesh and blood to condense his own blood beasts and expand their ranks. In just a few days, Yang Kai's army of blood beasts had grown to the size of a dozen or so. Among these dozen or so blood beasts, there was even the 10th grade monster beast that the 4 of them had killed together, the steel flame ghost spider. This monster beast's body was extremely tough and was surrounded by a pale white spirit flame that was capable of burning anything in its path. An origin returning realm cultivator would have died upon contact with it, and if not for Ni Guang, the other 3 probably wouldn't have been able to kill it. This could be said to be Yang Kai's biggest harvest so far. Except for the steel flame ghost spider. For example, the Zhu Zhen bird, star emperor turtle, 8-eyed demon toad, purple thunder sky leopard, all kinds of ancient monster beast with different unique bloodlines were taken under Yang Kai's command. It could be said that on the surface, Yang Kai had gained nothing. However, from a fundamental point of view, he had earned more than anyone else. Because what he had gained was an increase in his own strength, while what others had gained was just external help. Transforming external help into strength required another process. After a few days of getting along, Ni Guang and Luo Lan began to feel shocked. Because they discovered that Yang Kai's golden blood threads seemed to be inexhaustible. When Yang Kai was dealing with the first tail-crowned snake corpse, Ni Guang didn't pay much attention to it. If it was just a blood beast condensed from a single golden blood thread, he really wouldn't put it in his eyes. But now, the number of blood beasts Yang Kai had collected was enough to shock him. If he released a dozen blood beasts like that, even he would have a headache. And from the looks of it, this was far from Yang Kai's limit. Ni Guang found it hard to imagine what it would be like if Yang Kai gathered a certain number of these strange blood beasts. He finally began to take Yang Kai seriously. Along the way, he would occasionally communicate with Shui Yu with his divine sense, wanting to inquire about Yang Kai's details and whether he could win him over to Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce. Shui Yu didn't know much about Yang Kai, so she couldn't give a definite answer for the time being, but she did have the idea of inviting Yang Kai to join them. A few days later, Yang Kai's blood beasts had reached more than 20, and his blood beast army was beginning to take shape. Now that they encountered a monster beast, there was no need for Ni Guang and the others to take action. As soon as Yang Kai's blood beast army was dispatched, it would quickly surround the enemy and beat them to death, causing his gains to snowball. On this day, Ni Guang, who was leading the way, suddenly stopped, frowned, and swept his surroundings with his divine sense. "Uncle Ni, what's wrong?" Shui Yu looked around but didn't find any trace of danger, so she couldn't help asking. Someone's coming. Ni Guang's eyes suddenly flashed as he turned to a certain direction and quickly said, "They're moving very quickly." Hearing this, everyone's complexion couldn't help changing as they followed his gaze. Soon, Yang Kai and Luo Lan also noticed the movement in that direction. Very far away, there were indeed two auras rapidly approaching, and judging from the other party's aura fluctuations, it was obvious they were Origin King Realm Masters. In fact, it wasn't just one, but two. A moment later, two streams of light appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Whether it was intentional or not, the direction these two people were heading towards was exactly where Yang Kai and the others were stopping. After a while, the distance between the two sides rapidly closed. At this time, Ni Guang also recognized the identities of these two people and his expression became cold as he snorted, "It's actually those two. So it's them." Luo Lan couldn't help paling slightly as a look of dread appeared on her face. Yang Kai also frowned secretly. Before entering this place, Xueyu had introduced him to the Origin King Realm Masters present at that time, so he also recognized the origins of these two at this moment. Of these two, one was an old man while the other was a middle-aged man, but neither of them was a good person. The old man's name was Kong Fa, and he was an elder of Galaxy Ridge. Galaxy Ridge could be considered a major force in the star field. However, just like another force, Abandoned Lair, it had a notorious reputation. Most of the people gathered in these two great forces were people who committed all manner of evil, and there were also many cultivators who had committed crimes on various cultivation stars who had no choice but to seek refuge with these two great forces. What they liked to do the most was wander around star territory, and whenever they encountered a lone starship, they would rob it. They were the true bandits of star territory. Whether it was Sword Union, Purple Star, or Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, all of them had suffered many losses at the hands of these two great forces over the years. Many of their long-distance starships had disappeared for no reason, and the accompanying cultivator and materials had all gone missing. Although there was not much evidence to suggest that these two great forces were responsible, everyone understood that the ones who dared to act so unscrupulously were most likely this group of lawless people. The people of Galaxy Ridge and Abandoned Lair were both hated and abandoned by the entire star territory. Simply robbing starships was not a big deal. These two forces even occasionally sent a group of people to some cultivation stars that did not have an Origin King Realm Master to plunder cultivation materials and cultivators, bringing them back to their headquarters to enslave them and humiliate them wantonly. It could be said that Galaxy Ridge and Abandoned Lair were the two biggest tumors in star territory. However, because their forces were not weak, they could not be eradicated. Before this, Xueyu had warned Yang Kai that Kong Fa, who came from Galaxy Ridge, was not a good person and that if he were to encounter him alone in the future, he must be careful. Because although this person appeared to be kind, in fact, he was extremely vicious and merciless. The middle-aged man who came with Kong Fa was another big tumor in star territory, Xu Wei from Abandoned Lair. In Abandoned Lair, he was also an elder-level character. It was rumored that he used to be a cultivator from Purple Star, but for some unknown reason, he had defected and fallen into Abandoned Lair. And before he betrayed them, he slaughtered everyone in his own sect, not leaving a single one alive. This incident had shaken all of Purple Star, and Purple Star had dispatched masters to hunt him down, but Xu Wei had relied on his superb cultivation to carve out a bloody path and escape into Abandoned Lair. This incident caused Purple Star's face to fall greatly. Many years later, he had established a foothold in Abandoned Lair and taken the position of elder. These two could be said to be birds of a feather, jackals of the same feather. It was unknown how they had joined forces or why they were flying in the direction of Ni Guang. After recognizing these two, Ni Guang not only showed no fear, but instead sneered, "Good, this old master can't act rashly outside, but since you're courting death, this old master will fulfill your wish. Elder Luo, I'll have to ask you to hold back one of them while this old master kills the other before joining you." "Leave it to me." Luo Lan's pretty face went cold. "My Sword Union has many grievances with these two. Since we've met here, there's no reason to let them go. You two stand back and pay attention to protecting yourselves." Ni Guang ordered Yang Kai and Xueyu. Yang Kai and Xueyu nodded at the same time and prepared to evacuate. A battle between 4 origin kings was about to break out, and Yang Kai had no interest in getting involved. Chapter 1763. Just as Yang Kai and Shui Yu were about to quietly withdraw, Kong Fa flew over and shouted, "Is that Senior Ni of Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce?" He obviously recognized Ni Guang, but he did not show any intention of evading and instead greeted him head-on. This scene was very unusual because whether it was Kong Fa or Shu Wei, both of them had extremely disreputable backgrounds and their hands were stained with the blood of many Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce cultivators. Under normal circumstances, they would flee upon encountering Ni Guang, so why would they take the initiative to meet him head-on? Ni Guang froze for a moment before his brow furrowed slightly, wondering if the other party was plotting something. At the same time, he secretly gave Luo Lan a look, telling her to be careful as he coldly snorted, "Yes, it is this Ni." Kong Fa was overjoyed and immediately shouted, "Great, please save us, Senior Ni, this Kong will repay you generously in the future. Save us." Ni Guang was startled and seemed to realize something, his eyes instantly becoming deep as he looked behind Kong Fa and Shu Wei. In the next moment, his face changed drastically as he exclaimed, "Not good." He finally understood what Kong Fa and Shu Wei had encountered and why they had taken the initiative to approach him even though they knew he was here. These two were actually being hunted down by a group of ancient divine spirit. At this moment, Yang Kai and the others also noticed this. Since Kong Fa and Shu Wei appeared, there had been no disturbance behind them, but the two of them looked very distressed. Obviously, they had experienced a great battle and were slightly injured. At first, Yang Kai was quite puzzled as to what could cause 2 origin kings to suffer such a loss, but when Kong Fa shouted for help, a colorful light suddenly flashed less than 3 kilometers behind him. This light was so dazzling that at first glance, it was impossible to figure out what it was, but upon closer inspection, Yang Kai discovered that it was actually a swarm of butterfly-like insects. These insects fluttered their colorful wings and moved about in an unpredictable manner. Every time they flapped their wings, they would perform a teleportation-like movement, closing the distance between them and Kong Fa and Shu Wei. From everyone's perspective, there were at least 1,000 butterfly-like insects chasing after Kong Fa and Shu Wei. They gathered into a large group, as ferocious as a tide of bugs, not far behind them. "What is this?" Luo Lan's pretty face paled. Although she didn't recognize what this butterfly-like beast was, seeing how distressed Kong Fa and Shu Wei were, she knew it wasn't easy to provoke it. "Illusionary void butterfly," Ni Guang quickly replied. "They're ancient insects that are born with the ability to manipulate space. Their bodies are harder than steel, and they're extremely ferocious. Once they're out, they're like a swarm of locusts." Before he could finish his sentence, behind Kong Fa and Shu Wei, a wider range of 5-colored light flashed as more illusionary void butterflies appeared. That scale was more than 1,000, or even more than 10,000. There were at least several tens of thousands of illusionary void butterflies flying towards them. The scene was extremely shocking. Every time they flapped their wings, traces of visible ripples appeared in that expanse of space, and it seemed as if even space was affected. "Run!" Ni Guang shouted as he quickly pushed his Saint Chi, wrapped Shui Yu in it, turned around, and fled. He was different from Luo Lan. Before entering the Severed World, Ni Guang had made a lot of preparations and knew about the existence of illusionary void butterflies here. He also knew how difficult and ferocious they were, so when he discovered that Kong Fa and Shu Wei were being chased by such vicious beasts, Ni Guang no longer hesitated and only wanted to escape. Seeing him like this, how could Yang Kai and Luo Lan not understand the seriousness of the situation and quickly used their secret techniques to escape? Luo Lan was an Origin King Realm Master, so her speed was naturally not slow, and although Yang Kai's cultivation was low, he had many advantages over others. However, Yang Kai had an advantage that many cultivators did not possess. Whether it was his physique or the density of his Saint Chi, Yang Kai was far superior to an ordinary Origin returning Realm Master, so in terms of speed, he was able to keep up with Luo Lan. "Senior Ni!" Kong Fa shouted from behind, "I hope Senior Ni can help this Kong and Brother Shu escape." Ni Guang was furious and shouted without looking back as he fled, "Scram! If you dare follow this old master again, I'll take your dog life. Ni Guang was filled with annoyance. After encountering such a situation for no reason, the other party had shamelessly followed behind him, seemingly trying to divert the trouble away from him while constantly shouting for help. If it weren't for Ni Guang also being extremely wary of these illusionary void butterflies, he would have turned around and killed Kong Fa. This was undoubtedly a good opportunity to kill Kong Fa. Is Senior Ni really so unreasonable? Kong Fa's voice suddenly became cold. This old master has nothing to do with you two. Ni Guang coldly snorted. Kong Fa grinned strangely. Since Senior Ni is so unreasonable, don't blame this Kong and Brother Shu for being disloyal. Saying so, he and Shu Wei exchanged a glance before each of them summoned a secret technique and sent it towards Ni Guang from afar. A burst of energy erupted and a bright light flashed across the sky like a meteor, instantly bombarding Ni Guang's path. Ni Guang could not help pausing as he turned around and shouted angrily, "Two bastards, this old master will remember you. Despicable, shameless." Luo Lan also cursed. These two Origin King Realm Masters, who were born in the territory of the Starfield, were both determined to drag Ni Guang and Luo Lan down with them because only in this way could they reduce the pressure on them and escape from the pursuit of these tens of thousands of illusionary void butterflies. This brief pause allowed Kong Fa and Shu Wei to quickly close the distance between them while the illusionary void butterflies behind them were also getting closer and closer. After cursing, Ni Guang did not dare to linger at all and did not even have time to counterattack, continuing to flee with Shui Yu. Yang Kai's face also became gloomy as he realized that the situation this time was far from good. According to the current situation, it was only a matter of time before Ni Guang and Luo Lan were involved. Once these two were entangled by the illusionary void butterflies, with the power displayed by these monster beasts, Yang Kai and Shui Yu would be doomed. What's more, there was also Kong Fa and Shu Wei, these two insidious and cunning people, stirring up trouble, making the situation even more confusing. Senior Ni, since things have gotten to this point, why don't we all join forces to expel these monster beasts first? Seeing that his treacherous plan had succeeded, Kong Fa changed his previous pleading expression and actually began to cooperate with Ni Guang. Ni Guang's face was gloomy and he did not speak, only glancing over at Shui Yu with some worry. With his powerful second-order Origin King cultivation, he was not too afraid of these illusionary void butterflies. Even if he was surrounded, he was 80% sure he could escape, but if he had to bring Shui Yu along, the situation would be different. Thinking so, he suddenly sent a divine sense message to Shui Yu, "If we are separated, you must pay attention to protect yourself." Shui Yu nodded imperceptibly. At that moment, Kong Fa and Shu Wei used their secret techniques again to delay Ni Guang and Luo Lan. In order to drag these two Origin Kings down with them, Kong Fa and Shu Wei had obviously gone all out, using their strongest attacks right off the bat. By the time Ni Guang and Luo Lan resolved this, Kong Fa and Shu Wei were already less than 300 meters away from the group, and the countless illusionary void butterflies chasing them were also closing in. This old master swears that one day, "I will grind your bones to dust." Ni Guang saw that he could no longer escape, so he waved his hand and pushed Shui Yu away before turning around and roaring. "Why is Senior Ni so angry? Let's get through this first," Kong Fa said bitterly. Kong Fa laughed bitterly, but before he could finish speaking, his expression changed. This was because Ni Guang had directly attacked him. Kong Fa immediately let out a strange cry as he stretched out his hand and summoned a blood-red shield to protect himself. Kong, with a loud explosion, the violent attack hit the shield and caused it to glow red. Although it managed to resist Ni Guang's hasty blow, the aftershock still sent Kong Fa flying backwards. Under Kong Fa's horrified gaze, he fell directly into the encirclement of countless illusionary void butterflies. The 5-colored butterfly phantoms flew out in all directions and Kong Fa's figure quickly disappeared from the encirclement, followed by a burst of screams and violent energy fluctuations. A moment later, a figure shot up into the sky. Naturally, it was Kong Fa who had just managed to escape. However, in this short period of time, Kong Fa had been seriously injured. He was covered in blood and even half of his nose seemed to be missing. His face was also pockmarked, as if it had been corroded, giving him an extremely terrifying appearance. It was obvious how terrifying these illusionary void butterflies were. Countless illusionary void butterflies gathered together and followed closely behind, forming a 5-colored pillar of light that shot up into the sky, seemingly determined to kill all of them. Kong Fa reaped what he had sown and was now in a bad situation. Ni Guang and Luo Lan, who had been dragged into this by him, also wore nervous looks as they summoned their own defensive artifacts and used their secret techniques to attack the surrounding illusionary void butterflies. Ding ding dang dang. The attacks of the Origin King Realm Masters landed on the illusionary void butterflies and produced a series of metallic clangs. A large number of illusionary void butterflies fell from the sky and died, but more of their companions continued to rush forward. The place where the two of them stood was now completely surrounded. Xu Wei, who had been silent all this time, was also in a similar situation. The 4 Origin Kings could only fight on their own for a while and try to protect themselves. Xue Yu, who had been pushed out by Ni Guang before, had now joined up with Yang Kai. She knew that in such a situation, only by joining forces with Yang Kai could they hope to survive. Xue Yu summoned a bracelet artifact that exuded powerful energy fluctuations. Once this artifact was activated, it transformed into 10, and then 100. In a very short time, the entire world seemed to be filled with the phantom image of this bracelet. This was obviously an Origin King grade artifact. With Xue Yu's identity and status, it was natural for her to have an Origin King grade artifact. It would be strange if she did not have one. However, her cultivation was not high enough, so even if she had an Origin King grade artifact, it was only Origin King grade low rank. Under the urging of Xue Yu's Saint Qi, the countless bracelet phantoms buzzed and shot out like arrows from a bow, instantly blocking the onslaught of the illusionary void butterflies. From time to time, dead illusionary void butterflies would fall from the sky. However, Xue Yu was not happy at all and instead exclaimed in shock, "These things have strong defenses." Chapter 1764. An Origin King grade artifact was extremely powerful, and Xue Yu was not an ordinary cultivator, so her strength was quite high. Even so, her attacks were unable to kill all the illusionary void butterflies, demonstrating just how terrifying the defenses of these insects were. At the same time as Xue Yu took action, Yang Kai also took action. With a single thought, more than 20 golden blood threads exuding golden and red light appeared and transformed into the appearance of blood beasts. Thunder flame flying lizards, tail-crowned snakes, steel flame ghost spiders, Zhugen birds, star emperor turtles, 8-eyed demon toads, purple thunder sky leopards. As soon as these blood beasts appeared, they spread out and surrounded Yang Kai and Xue Yu, forming a strong protective circle. Immediately, under the control of Yang Kai's divine sense, these blood beasts used various methods to attack the surrounding illusionary void butterflies. The blood beasts had inherited most of the abilities of these monster beasts when they were alive, and although they needed to be controlled, making them somewhat inflexible, they were undoubtedly excellent helpers at this time. As soon as the 20 or so blood beasts of different sizes moved out, they instantly formed an impregnable defense, greatly reducing the pressure on Yang Kai and Xue Yu. Wang wang wang. The sound of the illusionary void butterflies flapping their wings rang out incessantly as they charged forward without fear of death, as if they had no fear of death and only had an instinct to kill the living. The blood beasts, which exuded strong blood aura fluctuations, became the best targets to attract the illusionary void butterflies. Yang Kai and Xue Yu were in the middle, so for a time, they were safe. Seeing this, Xue Yu could not help feeling overjoyed and quickly began manipulating her artifacts to kill the illusionary void butterflies. Yang Kai did not remain idle either. The remaining several dozen golden blood threads shot out and crisscrossed through the void, cutting one illusionary void butterfly after another in half. However, as time passed, Yang Kai found that the situation had not improved. The 4 Origin Kings were still fighting on their own, surrounded by countless illusionary void butterflies. The corpses of the illusionary void butterflies piled up on the ground, forming a thick layer. Yang Kai's brow furrowed. The current situation made Yang Kai realize that it was impossible to kill all these illusionary void butterflies. If they continued to fight like this, Yang Kai's group would eventually run out of strength and be slaughtered by these illusionary void butterflies. As for his 20 or so blood beasts, most of them were also injured, even though they were all transformed from golden blood threads. These blood beasts were not living creatures, but under the constant consumption of the illusionary void butterflies, the vitality fluctuations emanating from their bodies were becoming weaker and weaker. Shui Yu, we have to leave this place, Yang Kai whispered to Shui Yu. But Uncle Ni. Shui Yu hesitantly looked in Ni Guang's direction, but she couldn't see him at all. Everything was wrapped in gorgeous colors, and one could only vaguely sense the intense energy fluctuations coming from within. Mr. Ni's cultivation is very high, you don't have to worry about him. As long as we can escape, he should be fine, Yang Kai comforted. Are you sure you can escape from here? Shui Yu asked. Yang Kai said in a deep voice, whether or not I'm confident, I have to try. It's better than sitting here and waiting for death. Hearing him say so, Shui Yu nodded and grit her teeth. Good, I'll go with you. She had been warned by Ni Guang in advance and had a hunch that such a situation would happen, so she did not hesitate. Then follow me. Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he ordered the 20 or so blood beasts to launch a fierce attack in a certain direction. In an instant, a gap was opened in the illusionary void butterflies that had surrounded the two of them. Go! Yang Kai shouted, his figure flickering as he grabbed Shui Yu's arm and rushed out of the gap. The next moment, the 20 or so blood beasts twisted and turned back into golden and red golden blood threads before being taken back into his body. Suddenly losing their target, the illusionary void butterflies seemed to be startled for a moment. But soon, they flapped their wings and chased in the direction Yang Kai and Shui Yu had fled. At this time, Yang Kai did not have time to worry about such things. Wrapping himself in his space force, Yang Kai flew forward at an extremely fast speed. Using his space force, his speed suddenly increased. Shui Yu was dumbfounded for a moment, because it was not until this moment that she understood what it meant to be as fast as lightning. But soon, Yang Kai frowned because he found that his space force was greatly limited in this severed world. This damned place was filled with void cracks, so the Tao of space was unstable. In addition, when the illusionary void butterfly flapped its wings, it would interfere with the surrounding space, making it difficult for Yang Kai to use his space force. This discovery made Yang Kai's face sink, but what made him even angrier was that after he escaped the encirclement, a person actually chased after him. That person was none other than Elder Shu Wei of Abandoned Lair. Shu Wei was also struggling at this moment and was exhausted from running. He was being chased by countless illusionary void butterflies, but he did not care and instead desperately chased after Yang Kai and Shui Yu. Even if he was attacked, he showed no intention of fighting back and simply dodged. What does he want to do? Shui Yu faintly realized that the situation was not good. Yang Kai coldly snorted, he just wants to make us his scapegoat so he can escape. There was a saying that when being chased by an invincible enemy, it was not necessary to escape from the enemy, but only to escape from one's companion. Although Yang Kai and Shui Yu were not Shu Wei's companions, he obviously intended to chase after them. As long as he could use Yang Kai and Shui Yu to delay the illusionary void butterflies, he would have a chance to get rid of these annoying ancient divine spirit. On the other side, although Ni Guang discovered Shu Wei's intentions, he had no ability to stop him. At this moment, he couldn't even move and could only stare at Shu Wei's back from afar, roaring furiously. Despicable! After understanding Shu Wei's intentions, Shui Yu gritted her teeth and shouted, her face filled with anger. Yang Kai sneered, every man for himself. Since he wants to scheme against us, let's see if he has the ability. Yang Kai was not afraid and did not panic because of Shu Wei's actions. In just a dozen breaths of time, Yang Kai and Shui Yu had already fled a few dozen kilometers. As far as their eyes could see, Ni Guang and the others had long disappeared, leaving behind only a large number of illusionary void butterflies and Shu Wei. As for Shu Wei, he was also being chased by more illusionary void butterflies. While fleeing, Yang Kai released his divine sense to investigate the surrounding environment. Soon, he made a discovery and rushed in a certain direction with Shui Yu. In that direction, there was a void crack that could not be seen with the naked eye. Yang Kai believed that at this time, even if Shu Wei released his divine sense, he would not be able to detect it. As long as Shu Wei followed Yang Kai's footsteps, there was a chance he would run into that void crack. If that happened, even if he did not die, he would at least lose a layer of skin. Yang Kai deliberately brought Xueyu close to the void crack in order to interfere with Shu Wei's judgment. However, what Yang Kai never expected was that the countless illusionary void butterflies chasing after him were able to discover the existence of the void crack and quickly flew around it. This scene was naturally imprinted in Shu Wei's eyes. Shu Wei was an Origin King realm master, so he was naturally extremely experienced and cautious. Although he could not detect the void crack, from the movements of the illusionary void butterflies, he could infer that there was something strange about it. As such, he directly followed the path of the illusionary void butterflies and avoided the void crack unscathed. Yang Kai almost cursed out loud as he did not expect that Shu Wei would be saved by the illusionary void butterflies in this situation. As time passed, whether it was the illusionary void butterflies or Shu Wei behind them, they were getting closer and closer, and the situation was becoming more and more like they were about to be surrounded again. At this moment, Shu Wei relaxed a lot because the illusionary void butterflies that had been chasing him and Kong Fa before had been scattered into several groups. At this moment, there were not many of them chasing after him. With his means, if he fought hard, it was possible for him to kill all the illusionary void butterflies chasing after him. But in that case, he would inevitably lose a lot of his strength and might even be injured. This was not what he wanted. In this severed world, he had to maintain his best condition at all times to cope with possible dangers. As such, he had been using Yang Kai and Xueyu as leverage. The speed of these two juniors surprised him a little, but when he thought about Xueyu's identity, he felt relieved. He thought that Yang Kai and Xueyu's speed was all thanks to Xueyu. This young master of Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce must have cultivated some kind of incredible secret technique. But that was the end of it. Looking at the two figures only a few kilometers ahead of him, a gloomy expression flashed across Shu Wei's eyes. Immediately, he secretly urged his secret technique while forming a series of complicated seals with his hands. The next moment, a layer of crimson light suddenly emerged from Shu Wei's body, as if a blood mist was being sprayed from his pores. The moment this light appeared, Shu Wei's speed suddenly increased to an incredible degree. The short distance of a few kilometers was instantly closed by Shu Wei and Xueyu, directly overtaking Yang Kai and Xueyu. This was not the end though. Shu Wei also sent out a palm strike towards Yang Kai and Xueyu, condensing a powerful Saint Qi into an attack. There was no murderous intent in this palm strike because he had no intention of taking the lives of these two, he just wanted them to delay the illusionary void butterflies. Dead people could not be delayed. Damn it! Xueyu shouted angrily as she threw her bracelet artifact forward to meet Shu Wei's attack. Hong, with a loud bang, a burst of energy erupted and the bracelet flashed wildly under the violent force, causing Yang Kai and Xueyu's speed to plummet and they were forced to stabilize themselves. Ha. Shu Wei laughed wildly before turning back to look at Yang Kai and Xueyu mockingly. You two brats, try to survive. He wore a look of arrogance, as if his scheme had succeeded. Want to run? Yang Kai's face went cold as he stared straight into Shu Wei's eyes, his left eye suddenly turning golden as a budding lotus pattern appeared in his pupil. Chapter 1765. Yang Kai hated Shu Wei for using him to escape, so naturally, he wouldn't give up so easily, so he took advantage of the moment Shu Wei laughed arrogantly and relaxed to use his blossoming lotus secret technique. Yang Kai wasn't done yet though. With a flick of his wrist, the verdant dragon bone sword shot out, and with a loud dragon roar, a giant dark green dragon pounced towards Shu Wei, opening its bloody maw and spitting out a highly toxic and corrosive breath. Shu Wei's smile froze on his face in an instant and his eyes could not help trembling slightly. He had not expected that Yang Kai, an Origin King, could make such an extraordinary move. In the next moment, he noticed a pure spiritual energy bombarding the barrier of his knowledge sea, causing his Origin King realm knowledge sea barrier to tremble and crack. This pure spiritual energy then invaded his knowledge sea through this crack, transformed into a lotus flower, and slowly bloomed while absorbing the strength of his knowledge sea. A splitting headache. Shu Wei couldn't help screaming as he hurriedly stabilized his mind and pushed the power of his knowledge sea to resist this strange lotus flower. Fortunately, his cultivation was not weak, so although he had been caught off guard by Yang Kai, he was not completely defeated. As soon as he pushed the power of his knowledge sea, the slowly blooming lotus flower was completely suppressed. However, if he wanted to expel it, it would take some effort. Shu Wei Zhen didn't have time to pay attention to the abnormalities in his knowledge sea because the giant dark green dragon had already opened its bloody maw and rushed towards him. In front of this giant dragon, he was as small as an ant. Seeing that the giant dragon was about to swallow him, Shu Wei grit his teeth. The crimson light around his body became brighter and his speed soared, allowing him to narrowly avoid the giant dragon's attack. When he reappeared, he was already 10 kilometers away, but his face was slightly pale and his breathing was rapid. First, he had fled with Kong Fa for a long time, then fought countless illusionary void butterflies, used 2 secret techniques that consumed a huge amount of spiritual energy, and was even attacked by Yang Kai's blossoming lotus secret technique. Even if he was an Origin King Realm Master, Shu Wei was unable to bear it for a while. Shu Wei turned around bitterly, looking at Yang Kai and Shui Yu who were being surrounded one after another. "Brat, you better pray that you die here. Otherwise, I will make you regret being born in this world." As an Origin King, he had been caught off guard by an Origin returning Realm Junior. This was simply a great humiliation. Fortunately, no one else saw the scene just now. At the very least, it allowed him to retain some of his dignity. After he was done, he didn't stay any longer. He immediately fled. Shu Wei did not believe that Yang Kai and Shui Yu could survive the attacks of so many illusionary void butterflies. Even he himself might not be able to escape alive under such circumstances. Otherwise, he wouldn't have tried so hard to make use of these 2 juniors. Humph. Yang Kai coldly snorted and stopped moving forward. After being delayed by Shu Wei, he and Shui Yu had no way to escape. Now, the number of illusionary void butterflies surrounding them was twice as large as before. After all, Shu Wei had disappeared, so the illusionary void butterflies attacking him before had all changed their target. More than 20 blood beasts were once again released by Yang Kai to protect him and attract the attention of the illusionary void butterflies. The giant dark green dragon transformed from the dragon bone sword also joined the fray. Shui Yu, who was standing next to Yang Kai, wore a dignified expression as sweat dripped from the tip of her nose. She was constantly summoning her artifact, consuming a great deal of her Saint Qi, but she had no intention of giving up. While killing enemies, she stuffed pills into her mouth to restore her Saint Qi. Even her symbiotic demon spirit, Xie Ji, was released by Shui Yu. This symbiotic monster spirit was extremely powerful, and in terms of combat power alone, it was not inferior to Shui Yu's. Many years ago, in the Emperor Garden, Shui Yu had used this symbiotic monster spirit to fight Shanqing Luo's heavenly moon demon spider to a draw, demonstrating just how ferocious it was. Even so, the situation was still unsalvageable. The light on the blood beasts' bodies flickered, as if they could collapse at any moment, causing their defensive perimeter to shrink. "How come you don't look worried at all?" Shui Yu suddenly turned her head to look at Yang Kai and asked with a strange expression. Her hands did not remain idle as she sent out a series of powerful secret techniques, killing a large number of illusionary void butterflies and relieving the pressure on the blood beasts. It wasn't until this moment that she discovered that Yang Kai's face was completely calm, without the slightest trace of nervousness one would expect from someone who had reached a dead end. "What are you worried about?" Yang Kai chuckled and asked rhetorically while manipulating his golden blood threads to accurately harvest the lives of the illusionary void butterflies. "Aren't you afraid of death?" Seemingly infected by his demeanor, Shui Yu's expression also calmed down. "Nonsense." Yang Kai spat disdainfully, "Who isn't afraid of death? But, there is a saying that if one dies under a peony flower, even a ghost can die a happy death." Shui Yu was taken aback for a moment before immediately glaring at Yang Kai. "At this time, you're still in the mood to joke around?" Yang Kai just chuckled dryly and did not answer. Although the current situation seemed extremely dangerous, it was actually very easy for him to resolve. He had at least 2 ways to get rid of these illusionary void butterflies. The simplest method was naturally to summon the sealed world bead and take Xueyu to hide inside the sealed world bead. Once the 2 of them disappeared, it would be impossible for the illusionary void butterflies to remain here. In addition, he could also tear space and escape. Although the space force fluctuations here were chaotic and could interfere with his use of space force, escaping 100 to 200 kilometers at a time would not be a problem. The only concern was that he might encounter some kind of danger in the void. Both methods were very effective, and Yang Kai was fully confident he could succeed. However, this would inevitably expose some of his trump cards, especially the sealed world bead. This kind of thing had its own independent world, and its existence was simply too incredible, so Yang Kai did not dare expose it in front of Xueyu. After all, she was the young master of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce, and his relationship with her was not good enough for him to share secrets with her. As such, he had been thinking about how to get the best of both worlds. Yang Kai. Xueyu suddenly called out leisurely. What? Yang Kai turned his head and looked at her, feeling that her tone was a little strange at the moment. Have you always hated me? Xueyu asked, her eyes drifting, as if she did not dare to look at Yang Kai. Why would I hate you? Yang Kai was stunned. Because I sent people to hunt you down, and because I bullied you. Xueyu said softly. Haha. Yang Kai laughed. What are you laughing at? Xueyu frowned, looking at Yang Kai with some displeasure. She wanted to talk to Yang Kai seriously, but the other party was acting so indifferent, making her feel like she was being ignored. Yang Kai looked at her playfully, smiling as he said, the dignified young master of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce has such sentimental moments. After all, a woman is a woman. This sentence seemed to have stirred up a hornet's nest, causing Xueyu to grit her teeth and shout, I am a woman, so what? I was born a woman, and I never wanted to be a man. Do you think I like it? After so many years, who has ever considered my feelings? Saying so, she stretched out her hand and tapped her chest fiercely. With a flash of brilliance, the Xueyu standing in front of Yang Kai instantly changed her appearance. At this moment, she was no longer the heroic and extraordinary man she had been before. Instead, she was a beautiful woman with a graceful figure, long hair that reached down to her hips, and a pair of beautiful eyes staring at Yang Kai as if she wanted to eat him alive. Combined with the man's clothes she was wearing, Xueyu at this moment had a different kind of temptation. Yang Kai stared at her for a moment before rubbing his nose in amazement. I was just saying something casually, why are you reacting so strongly? Xueyu just stared at him, her eyes flashing with a light of love and hate that Yang Kai was familiar with. Hey! Yang Kai looked helpless. Is it okay for you to do this? If someone were to see you like this, it wouldn't be good for your Chamber of Commerce. If someone were to see your special constitution, you might be taken away. Xueyu's special constitution was extremely attractive to Origin Kings. The dragon marrow phoenix body was something that could only be encountered by chance. Any man who obtained Xueyu's primordial yin would be able to greatly increase their strength without any hidden dangers. Xueyu's primordial yin could be said to be the best pills. For Origin Kings who had been cultivating for countless years but were still unable to improve their strength, it was an unimaginable temptation. Even if her identity was the young master of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce, there were bound to be people who would take risks to obtain her. There was no shortage of crazy people in this world. Xueyu sneered, brushed her hair back behind her ear, and squinted towards Yang Kai, saying leisurely, besides you and me, is there anyone else here? Besides, you already knew I was a woman and knew about my special constitution, but I don't see you having any ideas about me. What's wrong? Young lady isn't attractive at all? Why are you bringing this up now? Yang Kai's expression suddenly became unnatural. Although he was well versed in the ways of men and women, sometimes he still felt that some women were unreasonable. In this kind of place, in this kind of environment, Xueyu was actually discussing such things with him. He simply didn't know how to answer. You shameless bastard, you actually know how to be shy. Xueyu blushed slightly, but still continued to despise Yang Kai. I really didn't know you had such thin skin. Back then on that dead star, how could you be so shameless? That was an accident, okay? Yang Kai glared at her. It was so many years ago, what are you doing with it? Didn't we agree to forget it together? Who agreed with you? I will never forget that kind of thing for the rest of my life. Shueyu's chest heaved violently as her anger erupted, and with a wave of her hand, countless illusionary void butterflies were killed on the spot. Fine, what exactly do you want to do? Yang Kai looked at her dejectedly. Tell me, you're making me very confused. What do I want to do? Shueyu grit her teeth and shouted, what do you think I want to do? What else can I do? With a hysterical look, she roared 3 times in a row, a trace of grievance mixed with her anger. Chapter 1766. Seeing Shueyu's unreasonable appearance, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling angry. Staring at her coldly for a moment, Yang Kai suddenly snorted and took a step towards her, a fierce light flashing across his eyes, causing Shueyu's face to pale slightly. The next moment, Yang Kai stretched out his hand and pulled Shueyu's tender body into his arms, and under her stunned and horrified gaze, he leaned over and kissed her thin and tender lips. At the same time, his other hand covered her private part and began to rub vigorously. His actions were extremely rough, as if he didn't have the slightest intention of showing any tenderness towards the fairer sex. Ouch, you bastard! Shueyu screamed in panic as she stretched out her hands to push Yang Kai away, but no matter how hard she tried, she was unable to push him away. The stalwart body that was pressed against her was like a towering mountain, unmoving. Amidst the pain, a strange feeling spread throughout her body. With a soft moan, Shueyu struggled a few times before her body soon softened. The surrounding illusionary void butterflies flapped their wings, making a buzzing sound as the colorful butterflies wrapped around the two of them. The blood beasts fought fiercely while the giant dark green dragon roared. After a long time, their lips parted. Yang Kai pushed Shueyu away and squinted at her, a look of abandonment on his face. Shueyu's cheeks were flushed red and her slender white neck was also flushed red. Her body seemed to have gone limp, and after leaving Yang Kai's embrace, she staggered slightly, but at this moment, she was looking around, her eyes drifting, no longer showing the aggressive posture she had before. Satisfied? Yang Kai snorted. You. Shueyu's face flushed red as she opened her mouth but did not know what to say. Damn, you're never done. Yang Kai cursed. Why don't you take a look at when you're still bothering me? You really don't know what you're doing. Shueyu suddenly wore a look of grievance as her eyes turned red and she began to cry, but she quickly adjusted her mood and took a deep breath. Gritting her teeth, she said, so what? I got what I wanted anyway. Is this what you want? Yang Kai looked at her sarcastically. So what if I am? Shueyu pursed her red lips. In this world, besides my father and the Chamber of Commerce's elders, only you know that I'm a woman. I don't want to die without experiencing what it's like to be a woman. So you thought you were dead for sure. Yang Kai suddenly realized why this woman was so crazy. That's right. You said it yourself. Even if I die under a peony, I'll still be a romantic ghost. So what if I let you be a romantic? Shueyu giggled like a beautiful fairy. At the very least. If I really die here, I'll die as a woman. At least I'll have one of my wishes fulfilled. Unreasonable indeed. Yang Kai shook his head slightly. Shueyu twisted her neck and snorted, whatever you say. After speaking, Shueyu seemed to relax a lot. Her whole person became more spirited, and even her face was brimming with a dazzling brilliance. Let me say this first. You forced me to do this today, so I won't take responsibility. Yang Kai raised a finger and waved it in front of Shueyu's face, as if he had eaten her dry and wouldn't take responsibility. Who wants you to take responsibility? Shueyu curled her lips. I know you have women, and more than one, but, as the saying goes, a wife is better than a concubine, and a concubine is better than a lover. You know quite a lot. Yang Kai chuckled before suddenly sighing and looking at Shueyu with a solemn expression. He whispered, it's not easy for you either. Shueyu pouted, it's good that you know. As she spoke, she took the initiative to lean towards Yang Kai and extend her jade white hand towards Yang Kai. Kai Yang held her hand in his and teased, what's wrong? Are you ready to go to the Yellow Springs with me? In any case, it's already like this, so if you have any other methods, hurry up and use them. Otherwise, I'm afraid your women will become widows and I won't have the strength to fight anymore, Shueyu said indifferently, as if she was mentally prepared to die. Yang Kai nodded and reached out to hug Shueyu's waist. Seeing this unfathomable look on his face, Shueyu's eyes couldn't help lighting up. She was really prepared to die here, but seeing Yang Kai's posture, it was obvious he still had some strength left. She couldn't help flashing a brilliant light as she secretly looked forward to seeing what cards Yang Kai still had up his sleeve. Yang Kai grinned meaningfully and was about to use his space force to tear space and escape with Shueyu when he suddenly remembered something. Pausing for a moment, Yang Kai took out what he was looking for. It was a bracelet-like artifact, but it was simple in texture and was obviously quite old. What's more, this bracelet seemed to be engraved with countless complex runes. Staring at this bracelet, Yang Kai turned to look at the illusionary void butterflies surrounding them and with a thought, poured his Saint Qi into the bracelet. The next moment, the bracelet exuded a faint light and the runes engraved on it seemed to move for a moment, releasing a mysterious wave of power. An incredible scene happened next. When this wave of power swept out, the illusionary void butterflies that had been besieging the blood beasts without fear of death seemed to have encountered nemesis and fell from the sky. Looking at this situation, it was as if the power of these illusionary void butterflies had been restrained. What is this? Shueyu looked at the bracelet in Yang Kai's hand in surprise. Yang Kai didn't speak and simply continued to pour his Saint Qi into it. Another wave of energy burst out and more illusionary void butterflies fell to the ground. In a short time, nearly half of the illusionary void butterflies that had surrounded the two of them had lost their ability to move while the rest were forced to flee in horror. This thing can actually be used like this. Yang Kai also had a look of surprise. What the hell is this? Shueyu asked again as she looked at the bracelet in amazement. Under the investigation of her divine sense, she was unable to tell what grade this artifact was. The insect enslavement bracelet. Yang Kai replied casually, someone told me that it has a magical effect on some exotic insects. I just wanted to try it out, but I didn't expect it to really work. The insect enslavement bracelet was an emperor artifact, an artifact refined by the insect emperor. Countless ferocious exotic insects were sealed inside it. After Yang Kai killed the insect emperor, this insect enslavement bracelet became his trophy, but because his cultivation was not high enough, he did not dare refine it easily and had been storing it in his space ring. Yang had told him that this insect enslavement bracelet was a powerful artifact that the insect emperor had relied on to become famous. The aura it emitted could naturally restrain all exotic insects, and judging from the situation in front of him, the illusionary void butterflies were undoubtedly restrained by this insect enslavement bracelet. Although Yang Kai had not refined the insect enslavement bracelet at all and had only slightly stimulated its power with his Saint Qi, he was still able to make these illusionary void butterflies lose their ability to move. The strength of an emperor artifact was obvious. However, Yang Kai was unable to exert its full power, so the illusionary void butterflies did not die. They simply instinctively feared the aura of the insect enslavement bracelet and lost their ability to move or even their desire to attack. A thick layer of illusionary void butterflies covered the ground, all of them struggling but unable to fly up. Even more illusionary void butterflies fled into the distance, but they did not disperse and instead surrounded Yang Kai, sealing off the surrounding space. Yang Kai laughed and waved his hand to take back his severely damaged blood beast army. At the same time, he also put away the dragon bone sword, held the insect enslavement bracelet high, poured his Saint Qi into it, and strode forward with Shueyu. Wherever he went, the illusionary void butterflies would constantly retreat, always maintaining a certain distance from him. Once the distance was closed, the illusionary void butterflies would inevitably fall to the ground and wait until he was far away before flying up again to continue their pursuit. Shueyu was pleasantly surprised. Although she had been prepared to die before, if there was a chance to live, no one was willing to die so easily, especially since she had just spoken with Yang Kai and was filled with hope for the bright future ahead of her. Like this, the group advanced for 100 kilometers without any worries, but the illusionary void butterflies never dispersed and continued to follow Yang Kai and Shueyu. These annoying things, Yang Kai frowned, realizing just how troublesome this ancient divine spirit was. Why don't we kill them all first? Shui Yu proposed. In any case, with the suppression of the insect enslavement bracelet, the illusionary void butterflies could not pose a threat to her and Yang Kai. All they needed was time. Too troublesome. Yang Kai shook his head, looked around, and after a moment, his eyes lit up and he pointed to a certain direction. Let's go there. Saying so, Yang Kai took Shui Yu and flew over. Hey, what do you want to do? Shui Yu was shocked because in the void in front of them was a void crack that was visible to the naked eye, more than 1,000 meters long, and exuded a terrifying aura. The direction Yang Kai was heading was straight towards this void crack, without the slightest intention of avoiding it. What's wrong? Just a moment ago you said you wanted to go to the Yellow Springs with me, but now you're scared. Yang Kai looked at her with a smile. If you're scared, it's not too late to leave. Shui Yu bit her red lips and said, who's scared? Don't try to test my intentions. Saying so, she pushed her Saint Chi in a fit of pique and dragged Yang Kai towards the void crack. Yang Kai remained unmoved and simply let her do as she pleased. The two of them approached the void crack at an extremely fast speed, and when they were so close, Yang Kai could clearly feel Shui Yu's nervousness. After all, there was a huge void crack in front of them, and no one knew what they would encounter or whether they would be able to find their way back. Just as they were about to rush into the void crack, Shui Yu turned her head and glanced at Yang Kai, seemingly making a final inquiry. After failing to obtain Yang Kai's denial, Shui Yu grit her teeth and took the initiative to drag Yang Kai into the void crack. In a flash of light, the two of them disappeared. The illusionary void butterflies that were tailing them didn't stop until this moment, circled around a few times, and after confirming that there was no prey, withdrew like a swarm of bees. Chapter 1767. Surrounded by chaotic nothingness, it was as if they were falling into an endless abyss. Shui Yu couldn't help holding Yang Kai's hand tightly, her whole body clinging to him as she sought a sense of security. She had never experienced such a bizarre experience. Void cracks were regarded as terrifying existences by all Origin kings, but this time, she had taken the initiative to rush into them. She didn't know what Yang Kai was relying on, but she could only choose to believe that this man who had just molested her in an extremely rude way would not put her in danger. Yang Kai really didn't disappoint her. In this dark space crack, he didn't show the slightest fear and instead patted his hands to calm himself down. Perceiving Yang Kai's comfort, Shui Yu's mood immediately relaxed. What should we do now? Shui Yu asked. She turned her head back, wanting to see the entrance they had come from before, but she could no longer see it. Void cracks were unpredictable and space was dislocated. If one entered from a certain point, they might appear tens of thousands of kilometers or even 1 million kilometers away in an instant, so it was naturally impossible to find their way back at this moment. Don't worry, Yang Kai's tone had a rare gentleness as he chuckled, just leave this place to me. Shui Yu gently nodded. Yang Kai's words seemed to have a reassuring charm, allowing her to relax both physically and mentally. What strong space force fluctuations. This place is really extraordinary. It seems we should have entered earlier. Yang Kai released his divine sense to investigate the surroundings, seemingly a little annoyed. His expression became solemn as he began circulating his space force, feeling the mysteries around him and comprehending the unique power of this void crack. He relished this opportunity. This kind of experience was of great benefit to his cultivation of the Tao of space, so of course he did not want to miss it. After a while, his gaze turned to a certain location and he said, "Come with me." Saying so, Yang Kai pulled Shui Yu and flew in that direction. Inside the void crack. There was nothing here, only chaos. This place was like a world that had never been opened before, with no living creatures or world energy. It was an existence even more complete than a dead star. Shui Yu couldn't sense anything at all. Except for the touch and warmth of Yang Kai's large hand that was holding her, she held it very tightly, afraid that she would be separated from Yang Kai. In this damned place, even the passage of time seemed to be incomparably long, but when Shui Yu stabilized her mind, not only did she not reject this place, but she also felt that this place was extremely dangerous. Instead, he enjoyed this kind of journey. For a man to hold her hand and cut through the thorns in a dangerous place, for a man to bear all kinds of dangers in front while she followed behind with peace of mind, this kind of experience was simply an extravagant hope for her. As the third young master of Shui Yu, as well as the future successor of Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce, under normal circumstances, the one who was leading the charge was her. She needed to establish prestige in front of her subordinates, she needed to solidify her position in Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce, and she also needed to disguise her gender, her tone of voice, and her style of conduct. Her life was far more tiring than most people. But here, she could put everything aside and simply enjoy the feeling of being taken care of. Yang Kai had just said that it wasn't easy for her. Perhaps he had just said it casually and didn't think too deeply about it, but this sentence had poked the deepest and softest part of Shui Yu's heart. It almost made her cry. At this moment, her heart was filled with warmth, and she only hoped that this kind of time would continue. At this time, if she still couldn't see that Yang Kai was proficient in the Tao of space, then Shui Yu wouldn't be the young master of Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce. But she didn't point it out. A smart woman knew when to speak and when to remain silent. After an unknown amount of time, Shui Yu was still immersed in the warm atmosphere, but somewhere in the distance, a faint light suddenly appeared. This light was faint and seemed to be very far away, like a few stars in the territory of the star realm, embellishing this world of nothingness. Ha ha. Yang Kai laughed loudly, seemingly in an extremely good mood. There really are space spirit crystals here. Luolan didn't lie to me. Shui Yu was startled for a moment before suddenly realizing, are those space spirit crystals? Did you enter this place to look for space spirit crystals? Yang Kai nodded and sped up. These few starlights seemed to be very far away, but in fact, it only took Yang Kai less than half a stick of incense worth of time to reach them. The light was faint, but it was better than nothing, but in this void crack, it was the only source of light. Taking a closer look, Yang Kai discovered that each of these space spirit crystals was about the size of a fist and had a hexagonal shape. They were crystal clear, and there were many fine cracks in them, from which space force fluctuations could be felt. They're quite different from the ones I've obtained before. Yang Kai was extremely surprised, but he didn't rush to take these space spirit crystals and instead began examining them with interest. The space spirit crystals in front of him were indeed very different from the ones he had obtained before, whether it was their shape or the fluctuations of power coming from them, especially the fine cracks on their surface, they were all different from the ones he had obtained before. Naturally, they're not the same. Shui Yu glanced at him, as if she knew something. What do you mean? Yang Kai asked suspiciously. This kind of space spirit crystal is a pure space spirit crystal. A true space spirit crystal is born from space force. The space spirit crystals in the outside world are just the concomitant products of various mineral loads and contain a lot of impurities. Although they can also be regarded as a kind of space spirit crystal, compared to this kind, their grade is far inferior. Shui Yu reached out and picked up one of the space spirit crystals, the entire process extremely easy, as if this space spirit crystal had been casually thrown away here. Pointing to the fine cracks on its surface, Shui Yu said, "Look at this, its power is enough to affect space itself. If this space spirit crystal is detonated using a secret technique, it can cause space to collapse on a large scale. At that time, no matter who is sucked in, I'm afraid they won't have a good ending. Space spirit crystals can be used like this." Yang Kai suddenly became interested and looked at Shui Yu thoughtfully. Does your Chamber of Commerce have such a secret technique? There should be. Shui Yu nodded. I've heard of it before, but I've never come into contact with it. Saying so, she handed the space spirit crystal to Yang Kai and continued, moreover, a space ring refined with this kind of space spirit crystal will have a huge space inside, much better than an ordinary space ring, but I don't think any artifact refiner would dare use this kind of thing to refine a space ring. Doing so would simply be playing with their lives. Saying so, the only 4 space spirit crystals left here were collected by Yang Kai. Silently probing them, Yang Kai found that the space force contained in these space spirit crystals was beyond imagination. If he could collect 20 of them, it would be enough for him to arrange a cross-cultivation star space array, one that could teleport him further than the ones he had arranged before. This kind of space spirit crystal can't be put into a space ring. What are you going to do about it? Shui Yu looked at the thing in Yang Kai's hand and asked. Even without her reminder, Yang Kai had already noticed this problem. He had just tried to put these space spirit crystals into his space ring, but he had been unable to succeed. The power contained in these space spirit crystals clashed violently with his space ring, making it impossible to accept. Thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai used his divine sense to communicate with the sealed world bead. In the next moment, the space spirit crystal was thrown into the sealed world bead. Yang Kai could not help breathing a sigh of relief. It seemed that the sealed world bead was an extremely high-end existence. After all, it was an emperor artifact, so it had its own independent world and its own world principles, so it should have no problem accommodating space spirit crystals. Shui Yu was surprised for a moment before chuckling lightly. It seems that you have a lot of secrets. Are you more interested in me now? Yang Kai beamed. Cut the crap. Shui Yu glared at him. I do have a lot of secrets, Ian. When I can tell you in the future, I'll tell you. Yang Kai's expression became serious as he quickly said. Shui Yu slowly shook her head. I don't need to know these things. I just want someone who can treat me like a woman, and that's enough. Hearing her heartfelt words, Yang Kai looked at her for a while before smiling slightly, taking Shui Yu's hand again and flying forward. An hour later, from the void crack, a few more points of starlight appeared in front of the two of them. After repeating this process for a few days, the number of space spirit crystals in Yang Kai's hands had reached nearly 100 pieces. The void crack here seemed to be the best breeding ground for space spirit crystals as the rich space force here condensed and crystallized. Shui Yu silently followed Yang Kai, helping him collect space spirit crystals without any complaints. The dangers of the outside world of the severed world seemed to be extremely distant to the two of them, as if the world they entered had nothing to do with others. On this day, Yang Kai was leading Shui Yu to continue searching for space spirit crystals when Shui Yu suddenly called out, Yang Kai, look over there. What's wrong? Yang Kai stopped and turned his head to look in the direction Shui Yu had indicated, but after a single glance, his expression brightened and he muttered, so many? In that direction, it was like a moonless night with countless stars, bright and dim lights blooming in the void, like bright lanterns in the dark, guiding the way. After staying here for a few days, Yang Kai naturally knew that every light represented an space spirit crystal born here, representing great wealth. He had been very satisfied with the hundreds of space spirit crystals he had obtained before, but when he saw the scene over there at this moment, he realized that his expectations had been too low. There were more than 100 points of light in that direction. That meant there were at least hundreds or thousands of them. Ha ha ha. Yang Kai couldn't help laughing as he stretched out his hand, pulled Shui Yu into his arms, hugged her, and kissed her fiercely on the cheek. This rough treatment made Shui Yu quite unhappy, biting her red lips and wiping her cheeks as she angrily muttered, You vulgar man. Yang Kai didn't answer and simply led her over to the other side like a bolt of lightning. Chapter 1768. The void was vast and boundless, but it was dotted with stars arranged in a spiral shape, and at the center of this spiral, a terrifying power fluctuation was pulsing. Yang Kai and Shui Yu stood above this huge spiral composed of countless space spirit crystals with dignified expressions. When they discovered that there were many space spirit crystals here before, the two of them had rushed over with great interest, but after arriving, Yang Kai discovered that this place was quite strange. The space spirit crystals were still the same space spirit crystals, but they seemed to be attracted by some unknown force and were arranged in a special shape, a spiral. Even Shui Yu, who was not proficient in the Tao of space, could feel a dangerous aura coming from the center of this spiral, as if it was the source of everything. This place was already a void crack, but at the center of this spiral, there seemed to be a strange existence that could even swallow this void crack. Yang Kai. Shui Yu whispered in Yang Kai's ear, I'm a little nervous. It's normal, I'm also a little nervous, Yang Kai comforted. Yang Kai comforted her. This was an instinctive fear of the power emanating from the spiral. No one could avoid it, but, this thing seems to be of great use to me. What are you going to do? Shui Yu looked at him in amazement. Yang Kai frowned and pondered for a while before patting Shui Yu's hand and saying, Help me collect those space spirit crystals first. Shui Yu looked at him deeply, her beautiful eyes bright, as if she could see straight into Yang Kai's heart and understand his thoughts. After a while, Xueyu nodded meekly, "En." As she spoke, she flew out. Arriving at the space spirit crystals scattered around the spiral, Xueyu began collecting them one by one. Yang Kai still stood in the same place, staring at the center of the spiral, a dignified look on his face that had never been seen before. After a long time, he released his divine sense to investigate the center of the spiral. He wanted to see what kind of mysteries were hidden inside this spiral, but when his divine sense came into contact with it, he was shocked to discover an astonishing and terrifying attractive force coming from it. This attractive force was so strong that it was simply unheard of, and Yang Kai's mind was instantly drawn in. Not only that. Standing in place, Yang Kai felt as if his body was being held by an invisible hand. Yang Kai disappeared directly, and when he reappeared, he was already at the center of the spiral. "Yang Kai!" Xueyu was shocked and hurriedly called out. However, she did not receive any response from Yang Kai. From her position, she could see everything. Yang Kai was simply standing in the center of the spiral. Motionless. It was as if he had lost all sense of the outside world and was completely unresponsive. Xueyu's voice with Xueyu. Xueyuyu immediately understood Xueyu was not daring to act rashly. They could only stand in place anxiously, gazing in the direction of Kai Yang, secretly praying that he was safe. Spinning, endless spinning, Yang Kai felt as if his body and soul were about to be torn apart. The unbearable pain made him want to open his mouth and scream, but he found that he couldn't make a sound no matter how hard he tried. The moment he was pulled into the spiral, his mind was repeating the process of the spiral. This feeling was like being sucked into a violent tornado, and he could only passively endure the destruction of the spiral without being able to do anything to resist. His knowledge sea churning, Yang Kai only felt dizzy, as if his soul was being thrown out of his body by this spinning force. Ever since he had achieved success in his cultivation, he had rarely encountered such a situation that left him at a loss. At any time, in the face of any crisis, he could quickly formulate a reasonable countermeasure to resolve the danger he might encounter. But this time, he found that he was somewhat powerless. While being pulled in by the spiral force, Yang Kai was shocked to find that the strength of his knowledge sea was drying up at a speed visible to the naked eye. Looking inside his body, Yang Kai found that the physique he was so proud of was beginning to show dense scars. Desperately urging his saint chi and spiritual energy, Yang Kai tried to break free from this strange spiral force. But he gained nothing. It was as if he had fallen into a quagmire, and the more he struggled, the deeper he sank. In less than a dozen breaths of time, his knowledge sea had dried up. The damage to his soul gave Yang Kai a splitting headache. Inside Yang Kai's knowledge sea, the soul-warming lotus, which was exuding a 7-colored glow, played a crucial role at this moment. While Yang Kai's knowledge sea was exhausted, it immediately began to nourish Yang Kai's soul and repair the damaged areas. The feedback and nourishment of the soul-warming lotus cleared Yang Kai's mind for a moment. But at this moment, Yang Kai suddenly had an unusual feeling. While the spiral force was destroying his body and spiritual energy, it was also adding another kind of force to his body. It was the Tao of space. This allowed Yang Kai to gain a new understanding of the mysteries of the Tao of space in a very short time. Yang Kai was overjoyed and quickly endured the unbearable pain while calmly perceiving his soul. Yang Kai suddenly gained a glimmer of understanding. At a certain moment, Yang Kai resolutely gave up resistance and allowed the spiral force to throw his soul out of his body. In an instant, another kind of vision appeared in front of him. At this moment, it was as if his soul had left his body. His soul covered the void, invisible and invisible, but he could see everything around him. He clearly saw that his body was still standing quietly in the center of the spiral, surrounded by countless space spirit crystals that exuded a faint light. Xueyu was standing not far away, constantly calling out his name. Her beautiful face was filled with anxiety, her beautiful eyes filled with panic, and her face was pale. Yang Kai tried to send his divine sense to her, but Xueyu didn't notice him at all and continued to scream. Yang Kai didn't continue because he knew that his soul wasn't truly leaving his body, and because of the influence of the Tao of space here, he couldn't transmit his thoughts to Xueyu. Yang Kai once again focused his attention on the spiral. Observing from this angle, Yang Kai was able to see more and obtain more. After a short while, Yang Kai thoughtfully urged his space force and released it in the direction of the spiral force. The pressure on him was greatly reduced. Whether it was from his soul or his body, Yang Kai suddenly felt much more relaxed. Yang Kai suddenly understood. This spiral energy was shockingly a type of extremely profound space energy, and it was countless times more profound than what he had comprehended. Before an absolute gap in cultivation, any resistance was futile and would only increase the pain he felt. Only by following the path of the spiral would one be able to comprehend such a profound realm. This was like copying a gourd, although for the time being one could only grasp the shape and not the essence, one could still gain some insights. If one persevered, one would inevitably be able to grasp the essence. After understanding this, Yang Kai no longer hesitated and began to urge his space force without restraint, allowing the circulation of his space force to coincide with the spiral's trajectory. This was an extremely difficult process, but also an extremely slow one. Countless wounds began to appear on Yang Kai's body and golden blood began to seep out from them, but instead of spilling out, the blood squirmed like a living creature and began to repair his wounds. Yang Kai's excellent physique played a crucial role at this time, allowing him to persist for a long time. Time passed little by little, and Yang Kai became completely immersed in this wonderful enlightenment, forgetting everything around him. As time passed, the space force exuding from his body not only showed no signs of weakening, but instead became stronger and purer, matching more and more perfectly with the spiral's trajectory. Yang Kai didn't feel much pressure from this. His space force and the spiral began to overlap, and the effect of this rotation on him was negligible. Until a certain moment, the two forces perfectly overlap. At that moment, the entire void seemed to hum for a moment. Yang Kai suddenly felt an extremely wonderful feeling in his heart. At this moment, he found that he seemed to have become the huge spiral, the two of them becoming one, inseparable from each other. The surrounding light was dazzling, and in the direction of the spiral, the countless space spirit crystals all bloomed with dazzling light before bursting apart under the influence of an inexplicable concept. The bursting space spirit crystals didn't cause the void to collapse, instead, they turned into tiny streaks of energy that flowed along the spiral's trajectory towards its center. These energies were densely packed like black lines, and they were innumerable. And at the center of this spiral was where Yang Kai's body was located. These black threads of energy formed by the bursting space spirit crystals all rushed into Yang Kai's body before disappearing. The dazzling light gradually dissipated and the entire void returned to darkness, without the slightest trace of light. Even the spiral's force had disappeared. Yang Kai, who had been standing in place all this time, finally had time to carefully examine his body. After releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai couldn't help frowning. He found that the state of his body was quite strange at this moment. Black threads were looming over his skin, and when these black threads appeared, it made him look like he was missing a part of his flesh. Only after these black threads disappeared did the missing flesh reappear. Naturally, his flesh wouldn't disappear for no reason. This was just a visual interference caused by the space force being too powerful. It was an interference that could even swallow one's vision and divine sense. Even Yang Kai couldn't stop this kind of interference. Perhaps he would have to wait until he fully familiarized himself with this power before he could eliminate it. However, at this moment, Yang Kai felt better than he had ever felt before. This time's accident had allowed him to swallow and fuse almost all of the wondrous concepts contained in the void spiral and the power of over 1,000 pure space spirit crystals, allowing his comprehension of the Tao of space to reach a new level, a height he had never been able to reach before. Overjoyed, Yang Kai carefully experienced the various changes he had undergone. The more he experienced these changes, the more he found that his previous understanding of the Tao of space was too shallow, and the more he discovered that if he had any attainments in the Tao of space, the more terrifying the means he could display would be. Yang Kai was secretly shocked. Chapter 1769. But now wasn't the best time to experience this. At this moment, it was as if Kai Yang was in possession of a rich treasury, and he had the key to it. In fact, he was already standing inside this treasury. But he had no time to examine and deal with his treasures. Calming his thoughts, Yang Kai turned to look in the direction of Shui Yu. He did not forget that in such a place, there was a person who was worried about him, constantly calling his name and relying on him. But after looking around, Yang Kai could not help frowning because there was no one in that direction. Shui Yu was nowhere to be seen. Looking around, as far as his divine sense could reach, there was no trace of Shui Yu. Where did she go? Yang Kai frowned secretly. Yang Kai didn't think that Shui Yu would abandon him. Although he hadn't had much contact with Shui Yu and didn't know much about her, from the short time they had spent together, he could tell that she wasn't that kind of person. In this void crack, even if she was strong and had not cultivated the Tao of space, she would be like a headless fly. Even if she spent thousands of years searching, she would not be able to leave. As such, it was impossible for her to find a way out on her own. Did she encounter some kind of danger? Yang Kai's heart clenched as he thought of a possibility, but what kind of danger could there be in this void crack? Although this was a place of chaos outside the severed world, the two of them had not encountered any danger along the way. After standing in place and contemplating for a while, Yang Kai began to move. No matter what, he had to find Shui Yu first. Taking a step forward, Yang Kai was already 100 kilometers away, his expression calm, every step taking in accordance with the mysteries of space. The previous Yang Kai. He had to tear space to move hundreds or thousands of kilometers at a time. Later, as his attainments in the Tao of space improved, although he was able to teleport short distances, it was only a dozen or so kilometers. Such a distance was nothing to him. But at this moment, Yang Kai could easily cross 100 kilometers in a single step, and this was far from his limit. As he moved, Yang Kai confirmed the insights he had gained after devouring the spiral force, further improving his understanding of the Tao of space. According to his thoughts, even if Shui Yu left, she couldn't have run too far. After all, in this damned place, she couldn't run far. Therefore, he used the place where he was before as the center and expanded in all directions in a circle to search for him. This was indeed the case. About half an incense stick of time later, Yang Kai discovered Shui Yu's figure. However, at this moment, she was in an extremely sorry state. She was fleeing in panic in the empty space, and her long hair seemed to be slightly disheveled while dark red blood flowed out from the corners of her mouth. Behind her was a strange monster beast that was 70 to 80 feet long. It looked like a sea lion. The monster beast's body was fat and bloated, and it had a wide tail. As it wriggled, it followed behind Shui Yu at a leisurely pace, and from time to time, it would issue an ear-piercing cry. When he saw the monster beast, Yang Kai's eyes narrowed and he was shocked. This was because he clearly felt the fluctuations of power from the monster beast that came from the same source as his own, the Tao of space. Every movement of this monster beast, every movement of its body, contained the mysteries of space. It seemed to be able to slide its body along the tracks of space as it advanced. Therefore, although its movements looked very clumsy, it could still easily follow Shui Yu, who was desperately fleeing. In other words, it didn't have the intention to immediately kill Shui Yu. Instead, it was toying with Shui Yu like a cat playing with a mouse. It took pleasure in chasing her. When Yang Kai saw Shui Yu, this monster beast opened its big catfish-like mouth and spat out a burst of energy visible to the naked eye. This energy was like a sharp blade that easily cut through space and shot straight towards Shui Yu. Perceiving the terrifying power behind her, Shui Yu's beautiful face paled. Opening her mouth, she bit the tip of her tongue and summoned the phantom of her symbiotic monster spirit, the Xieji, above her head. The Xieji's body was covered with thick black hair, its eyes were bright and piercing, and it had a single horn on its forehead, giving it a powerful appearance. As soon as it appeared, it opened its mouth and let out a roar before charging forward recklessly. The Xieji was a symbiotic monster spirit that was comparable to Shui Yu in terms of combat power. An ordinary third-order origin returning realm master was no match for it. However, that attack easily cut the Xieji's phantom in half. Amidst the mournful howls, the shadow of the Xieji disappeared. Shui Yu, who was the host of this phantom, also suffered a heavy blow and coughed up a mouthful of blood again. Her tender body trembled and even her speed of escape slowed. Shui Yu didn't dare to look back, her beautiful eyes dim. At that moment, a figure descended from the sky and pulled her into his arms. Shui Yu raised her head with difficulty and immediately saw Yang Kai's resolute face. Even in the darkness, she felt that his face exuded endless light, as if he had lit a beacon for her on the dim road ahead. "You're finally here." Shui Yu squeezed out a smile as she gasped for breath. "There was an accident," Yang Kai nodded. While speaking, he pushed his Saint Qi to investigate Shui Yu's body. His brow furrowed slightly as he found that Shui Yu's situation wasn't ideal. He didn't know how long she had been entangled with this monster beast, but the Saint Qi in her body had almost dried up and her meridians and physique were damaged. If he had arrived a moment later, even if Shui Yu hadn't been killed by the monster beast, she might have died of exhaustion. "How did you provoke it?" Yang Kai looked at the monster beast floating in the air and asked. "It appeared on its own." Shui Yu leaned into Yang Kai's arms and replied softly, "I waited for you there for several days, but you didn't show any movement. I didn't know when this monster beast appeared nearby, but it seemed to have been attracted by you and rushed towards you. I was afraid it would disturb you, so you lured it away?" Yang Kai looked down at her. Shui Yu hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yang Kai sighed softly as his heart filled with warmth. "Your body, what happened?" Shui Yu suddenly exclaimed as she stared at the abnormalities on Yang Kai's body in a panic. The faintly discernible flesh and black lines on his body made Shui Yu think that Yang Kai had suffered some kind of accident, causing her to be on edge. "Some of my strength can't be controlled, but it's not a big problem. As long as I completely integrate with that strength, everything will be fine," Yang Kai explained, patting Shui Yu's back and saying, "Don't worry, what we need to deal with now is this thing." Saying so, he stared at the strange monster beast in front of him with a dignified expression. Shui Yu's face changed slightly as she whispered, "Be careful, it's very powerful. Its strength is definitely not lower than an Origin King's and it is proficient in the Tao of Space. If I'm not mistaken, it should be a shocking void beast." Yang Kai grinned, "I know." Yang Kai's main purpose in entering the severed world with Luolan was this shocking void beast. But what he hadn't expected was that he would find traces of a shocking void beast in this situation. What else could it be but a shocking void beast that was proficient in the Tao of Space and could wander freely through the void? As such, even if Yang Kai had never seen this monster beast before, he could instantly determine what it was. "It's good that you know." Shui Yu relaxed and snuggled into Yang Kai's arms, assuming a comfortable position, and whispering softly, "Now it's up to you, my life is in your hands." Saying so, she directly used some kind of secret technique and fell into a deep sleep. She was an oil lamp that had run out of oil, so she needed to heal her wounds immediately, but the secret technique she used could only be used in a deep sleep. "You trust me so much." Yang Kai smiled lightly, suddenly filled with a sense of responsibility as he muttered to himself, "Then I can't let you down too much." Saying so, he flipped Shui Yu onto his back and carried her on his back before condensing his Saint Qi into a rope that tightly tied Shui Yu's body to him. After moving his hands and feet to make sure that no matter what he did, he would not be able to throw Shui Yu off his back before turning to look at the shocking void beast. Since Yang Kai appeared, the shocking void beast had not moved. However, on its fat head, its two small eyes flashed a terrifying light as they stared fixedly at Yang Kai, as if to it, Yang Kai was a delicious meal that it could not wait to pounce on. Shocking void beasts were naturally proficient in the Tao of Space, and Yang Kai had just swallowed and absorbed the void spiral, causing his comprehension of the Tao of Space to rise to a new level. On top of that, the amount of space force contained in his body was somewhat uncontrollable, so the aura he exuded naturally made the shocking void beast extremely happy. Staring at each other, Yang Kai's eyes were aggressive while the shocking void beast's eyes did not shrink back. In this boundless void, one man and one beast both felt the other's fighting intent. "Come." After a long time, Yang Kai beckoned to the shocking void beast, "I want your monster core, and you want my body, so let's see who gets what they want in the end and who ends up working for the other." It was unknown whether the shocking void beast understood Yang Kai's words or was simply angered by his provocative actions, but in the next moment, it let out a heaven-shaking roar, opened its mouth wide, and sent out a jet of black energy towards Yang Kai like a barrage of cannonballs. The speed of these energy attacks was incredibly fast. After all, they were released by the shocking void beast and were filled with space force. In an instant, they closed the distance limit and bombarded Yang Kai. This was a powerful attack that was enough to threaten an Origin King. Yang Kai's eyes lit up, and in the face of such an attack, not only did he not show any intention of retreating, his fighting spirit instead soared as he flicked his fingers. Secret technique, Space Blade. *************** A series of crescent-shaped space blades shot out, meeting the void beast's void roar with unerring accuracy. Space Blade was the only offensive space secret technique that Yang Kai had comprehended, and it had always been one of his trump cards. It had never failed him in every battle and had earned him many battle achievements. After swallowing and fusing with the void spiral, the power of this secret technique had increased several times compared to before. Although the size of the space blades he sent out had not changed, he could now control them more precisely and their lethality had increased significantly. Chapter 1770. The space blade collided with the void beast's void roar. Thunderous booms rang out incessantly as a violent burst of space force erupted. 10 feet in front of Yang Kai, space suddenly collapsed. That space was like a broken wall, shattering into pieces in a very short period of time. Chaotic fluctuations of power surged out and sputtered into the void. From the collapsed space, the void beast's huge body eerily stretched out and opened its mouth to bite Yang Kai. Taking advantage of Yang Kai's distraction, it directly approached him. Yang Kai seemed to have expected this, so he did not panic at all. With a slight movement of his feet, his body was shrouded in space force and gradually turned into a phantom. The void beast bit into empty air. The next moment, Yang Kai appeared above the void beast like a ghost and punched out with all his strength towards its head. Hong. Fist energy burst out and the void beast was smashed to pieces. However, Yang Kai did not feel the slightest joy after having succeeded. Instead, he frowned and hurriedly dodged. The moment he moved, the void beast that should have been smashed to pieces reappeared behind him and opened its bloody mouth again. The void beast that Yang Kai had smashed to pieces before was also just a phantom. The man and the beast were both extremely fast. Using space force, their movements were enough to interfere with the enemy's vision. A figure flashed and Yang Kai appeared 1,000 feet away. The void beast also stopped and floated in the void, accurately locating Yang Kai's position and looking at him. After a brief confrontation, the first test made the man and the beast realize that the other party was not a soft persimmon that could be crushed at will. In that case, Yang Kai murmured and grinned, "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, he waved his hand. The next moment, the stone mongoose Xiao Xiao and the artifact spirit Liu Yang, 2 super helpers, appeared. The stone mongoose carried the heaven-shaking pillar, its small and exquisite body hunched, its eyes darting around, as if it did not know where it was. As soon as Liu Yang appeared, she asked Yang Kai, "Master, what are your orders?" "Kill it." Yang Kai pointed at the void beast 1,000 feet away. Liu Yang looked at the void beast with a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "It seems to be very powerful." Yang Kai laughed. "If it's not powerful, I can deal with it alone. Why would I call all of you out? It is proficient in Space Force. So you must cooperate with me. Master's orders." Liu Yang nodded and a purple-red flame suddenly appeared on her jade-white hand. There were faint arcs of electricity flickering within it, and a violent force was emitted. "Then let's do it." Yang Kai grinned and his body blurred as he charged toward the void beast again. There was no need to say anything when cooperating with his 2 helpers because both the stone mongoose and the artifact spirit had a telepathic connection with Yang Kai. They could clearly see through Yang Kai's thoughts and cooperate perfectly with him. As soon as Yang Kai moved, Liu Yang Kai transformed into a ball of fire and followed closely behind Yang Kai. The stone mongoose Liu Yang Kai transformed into a stone giant and dragged the heaven-shaking pillar behind it as it walked through the void, slowly approaching the void beast at a leisurely pace. The void beast was no doubt quite intelligent, so when it saw Yang Kai Liu Yang Kai's 2 helpers, its beady eyes couldn't help but reveal a look of bewilderment. When it saw Yang Kai and Liu Kai charging toward it, it actually leapt forward. The void in front of it seemed to have turned into a lake, completely concealing its body once it passed through it. Liu Kai's eyes lit up as he sensed the changes in space around him. In the next moment, he gave the stone mongoose Liu Kai a command. The stone mongoose Liu Kai didn't hesitate at all. It let out a deafening roar and swung its heaven-shaking pillar to its left. The heaven-shaking pillar, which weighed several 100,000 kilograms, coupled with the stone mongoose Liu Kai's violent strength, was capable of shattering space itself. The moment the stone mongoose Liu Kai launched his attack, the shocking void beast's head happened to appear right where the heaven-shaking pillar was aimed at. It seemed as if the shocking void beast had taken the initiative to approach the stone mongoose Liu Kai's attack. The shocking void beast obviously intended to attack the stone mongoose first, but its trick was easily seen through by Yang Kai and used to his advantage. At such a close distance, even if the shocking void beast was proficient in the Tao of space, it wouldn't be able to dodge such a sudden attack. If this blow landed on its body, even if the shocking void beast's strength was comparable to an Origin King Realm Master, it would definitely be smashed to pieces. The stone mongoose's full-powered attack was no joke. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he secretly looked forward to the scene of flesh and blood splattering. But to his extreme surprise, the shocking void beast, facing this fatal blow, actually managed to twist its body and release a rich space force fluctuation from its body that transformed into a void vortex that blocked the stone mongoose's attack. The heaven-shaking pillar smashed the void vortex to pieces and the remaining power swept across the shocking void beast's body, causing blood to spurt out as the shocking void beast was sent flying 1,000 meters away. The place where its head was connected to its neck was a bloody mess with white bones vaguely visible. But in the end, the shocking void beast had survived, and its injuries weren't too serious. "I knew it wouldn't be so easy." Yang Kai grit his teeth and shouted as he stretched out his hand and pushed his Saint Chi forward, wrapping Liu Yang in his Saint Chi, and instantly arriving in front of the injured shocking void beast. The next moment, the master and servant pair launched a frantic attack on the shocking void beast. Hundreds of golden blood threads were infused with space force by Yang Kai, forming an inescapable net that completely sealed off a large area of space, cutting off the shocking void beast's escape route. At the same time, Yang Kai madly pushed his space blades towards the shocking void beast. On the other hand, Liu Yang's attack was much simpler. Flames mixed with thunder attribute energy gathered around the shocking void beast like falling petals, each of which contained terrifying power. The shocking void beast's body was scorched black the moment it came into contact with these flames. At the same time, fine arcs of lightning were also scattered across the shocking void beast's body, affecting its movements. For a time, the shocking void beast was forced into a position where it could only dodge and was unable to fight back, only able to roar continuously. Asterisk deng 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 deng. Asterisk the stone mongoose, wrapped in a layer of cold chi, cooperated with Yang Kai and Liu Yang to restrain the shocking void beast, raised the heaven-shaking pillar high and smashed it down again. As soon as this stick struck, the shocking void beast's eyes flashed with fear. It was not afraid of Yang Kai and Liu Yang's methods, but it was extremely wary of the stone mongoose's simple attack. This was a violent attack that even the shocking void beast's space transference secret technique could not resolve. The shocking void beast roared and struggled to resist, constantly using its void roar secret technique to form a dense barrage of attacks towards Yang Kai and his servant. At the same time, a space transference barrier appeared around the shocking void beast's body once again, forcibly withstanding the stone mongoose's attack. The sound of bones breaking rang out, and the shocking void beast's astonishing aura suddenly weakened for a moment. In such a short time, the shocking void beast had suffered too many attacks and was seriously injured. Facing Yang Kai and his servant, who were like wolves and tigers, the shocking void beast knew that it was no match for them. If it did not escape, it would likely die here. The shocking void beast began desperately urging its space force to interfere with the surrounding space. The hundreds of golden blood threads that had been scattered by Yang Kai were affected and could no longer remain stable, showing flaws. Liu Yang also cried out in alarm, his body covered in thunder fire as he carefully guarded against the shocking void beast's counterattack. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the shocking void beast leapt out and escaped several dozen meters in an instant, breaking free of Yang Kai and his servants' encirclement. "You want to run?" Yang Kai coldly snorted and was about to give chase when the shocking void beast used the same trick again and plunged into the void in front of it, disappearing. Yang Kai frowned and pushed his space force to its limit, but was unable to detect the shocking void beast's aura nearby. Soon, a look of understanding appeared on his face as he muttered, "It actually escaped." The shocking void beast had obviously escaped from the void, so Yang Kai was unable to detect its existence here. Without hesitation, Yang Kai immediately recalled the stone mongoose and Liu Yang and arrived at the spot where the shocking void beast had disappeared. Reaching into the void with both hands, Yang Kai tore at both sides. A void crack suddenly appeared. Yang Kai dove straight in. The next moment, he returned to the severed world. Yang Kai immediately began searching for traces of the shocking void beast. This strange ancient monster beast could freely wander through the void, so if he did not follow it in time, it would be easy for it to escape. The shocking void beast's roar rang out in Yang Kai's ears, and there was a sense of panic in its voice, as if it was being tortured by something. Yang Kai frowned and turned towards the source of the roar, the scene that entered his eyes causing his expression to change slightly. Not far in front of him, a black curtain covered a large area, and inside this black curtain, there were countless faces struggling, twisting, and changing. These faces were like yin souls, and the area enveloped by the black curtain seemed to be a place where yin souls gathered, exuding an evil and cold aura. Through this black curtain, Yang Kai could vaguely see the huge figure of the shocking void beast, but at this moment, it was surrounded by countless yin soul-like creatures, each of which had their mouths latched onto its body and were biting into its flesh. At a rate visible to the naked eye, the shocking void beast's body began to dry up, as if its flesh and blood essence were being sucked dry by these yin souls. No matter how hard the shocking void beast struggled, it was unable to escape from this black curtain. It was obviously at the end of its rope. Heh heh heh. A burst of strange laughter suddenly came from nearby. Yang Kai's face could not help sinking as he secretly pushed his Saint Chi and looked towards the source of the sound vigilantly. Over there, a figure shrouded in darkness stood quietly, and in the darkness, there seemed to be a pair of chilling eyes that were staring at Yang Kai. "It's you," Yang Kai muttered, his expression becoming dignified. Chapter 1771. Yang Kai recognized at a glance that this person wrapped in darkness was an Origin King Realm Master he had paid attention to before. This guy seemed to have paid attention to him before entering the Severed World, and Ni Guang had also said that this person was very dangerous and it was best not to provoke him easily. Yang Kai did not expect to meet the other party here. What's more, the other party had used some kind of method to trap his prey. The black curtain that enveloped the shocking void beast was obviously the other party's artifact. However, this artifact exuded an evil aura, and at a glance, it was obvious it was the kind of artifact that required the sacrifice of a large number of lives to refine. It was obvious that the owner of this artifact was not a kind person, and the number of people who had died at his hands was likely innumerable. Kai Yang's brow wrinkled. The current situation was not good for him. Although he was not too afraid of this guy with his background, the shocking void beast was now within the range of the other party's artifact. Yang Kai had worked so hard to seriously injure the shocking void beast, but now someone else had taken advantage of him, which was something he could not tolerate. However, if he rushed into the black curtain and snatched the shocking void beast's monster core, it would not be appropriate. Yang Kai wasn't afraid of the other party and was confident he could escape from under the other party's nose, but that didn't mean he could resist the other party's artifact head-on. If he really rushed into the black curtain, Yang Kai estimated his end wouldn't be much better than the shocking void beast's. What should I do? How can I get the shocking void beast's monster core without angering the other party? Yang Kai thought hard in his heart but could not come up with a suitable answer. Heh 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 heh. Just as Yang Kai's thoughts were racing, the Origin King Realm Master wrapped in the black shadow let out an intriguing laugh again, as if he was in a good mood. Immediately after, he said, "Young boy, your luck with women isn't shallow. Even in this kind of place, you actually have such a beauty. This old master is truly envious." As soon as these words came out, Yang Kai's face could not help changing. The other party had called out his surname as soon as he spoke. Obviously, this man recognized him, but Yang Kai could not remember when he had interacted with such an Origin King Realm Master. The number of Origin King Realm Masters Yang Kai had encountered so far was not too many, and he had an impression of every single one of them, but none of them matched the one in front of him. Yang Kai stared at him calmly. He asked tentatively, "Senior, do you recognize me?" "Of course this old master recognizes you." "Hehe, what's wrong? Have you forgotten this old master, boy?" The Origin King Realm Master said in a mocking tone. Yang Kai looked at him and didn't feel any malice from him. He pondered for a moment. Then, he cupped his fists and said, "Forgive me for not recognizing Senior. Since Senior recognizes me, why don't you show me your true face? It's natural that you can't recognize me. After all, my aura has changed a lot compared to back then." The other party didn't seem to be impatient at all. He nodded slightly and said, "Take a closer look at who this old man is," he said. The black chi that had been enveloping him quickly dissipated like a receding tide. In the next moment, the other party's face was imprinted in Yang Kai's eyes. "Ah!" Yang Kai was taken aback as he stared at him in a daze, asking in amazement, "Senior Guizhu, how could it be you?" After the black chi dissipated, Yang Kai immediately recognized who the other party was. This Origin King Realm Master was the first Origin King Yang Kai met when he first entered the Star Territory, the one who called himself Guizhu, who had been trapped on the floating continent for 2,000 years. Guizhu was accidentally swallowed by a void vortex back then. He ended up on the floating continent and ended up there for 2,000 years. During these 2,000 years, he broke through from the Saint King Realm all the way to the Origin King Realm. He had become a legend. However, for 2,000 years, he had been alone on the floating continent until Yang Kai and the others also ended up there. At that time, Guizhu had been studying space arrays, trying to use them to teleport out of the floating continent, but unfortunately, he failed. In the end, he had to rely on Yang Kai's attainments in the Tao of space to escape. At that time, a total of 7 people had escaped. In addition to Guizhu and Yang Kai, there was also Yu Shi and her 2 disciples, as well as Shen Tu, the son of Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce's president Ariou, and another woman. The past was like a puff of smoke, but it was the first important thing Yang Kai experienced after entering the Star Territory, so how could he forget? Guizhu was the first Origin King Realm Master he had ever met, so his memory of him was still fresh. However, Yang Kai had never imagined that he would meet the other party in such a place. Although Guizhu was cruel and had a violent personality, he was a man who clearly distinguished between gratitude and grudges. Back then, he had accepted Yang Kai's life-saving grace, so after leaving the floating continent, he had kept his promise and let Yang Kai go, even giving him a Star Emperor token as a thank you gift. Without that Star Emperor token, Yang Kai would not have been able to kill Luo Hai on Scarlet Wave Star. So, after learning that the other party turned out to be Guizhu, Yang Kai's vigilance immediately relaxed and he grinned at Guizhu, a look of surprise and happiness appearing on his face. "Of course it is this old master." Guizhu's mood was not bad, grinning meaningfully as he looked Yang Kai up and down, nodding lightly and saying in amazement, "Boy, you're quite amazing. How long has it been since we last met? You've actually cultivated to the 3rd Order Origin returning realm. This old master remembers that you were just a saint back then, right?" "2nd Order Saint." Yang Kai replied with a grin, "Senior Guizhu's memory is quite good." Guizhu nodded. "It seems that your opportunities over the years have not been small. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for you to have such achievements." "It was all thanks to Senior's blessing," Yang Kai replied. "How has Senior been these years?" "How else could I have been? I can't compare to you young people," Guizhu teased. As he spoke, he glanced over at Shui Yu, who was sleeping behind Yang Kai, his words full of meaning. Yang Kai smiled awkwardly. That was an accident. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai suddenly said, "By the way, Senior, have you managed to get your revenge?" Back then, Guizhu had said that after leaving the floating continent, what he wanted to do was take revenge. Before arriving on the floating continent, he seemed to have been framed by someone who was extremely powerful, and with his strength at the time, he was powerless to do anything, but after breaking through to the Origin King realm, he vowed to avenge his past shame. Now that so many years had passed, Yang Kai wondered if his wish had been fulfilled. Gui Zhu's expression became gloomy as he fell silent for a while before shaking his head and saying, "This old master's revenge is not so easy to avenge." "What's wrong? Boy, do you want to help this old master? Senior must be joking." Yang Kai quickly waved his hand. Junior's strength is too low, how could he help Senior? If he were to become a burden to Senior, even 10,000 deaths would not be enough to atone for it. He did not dare to agree casually. Although he and Gui Zhu had some friendship before, he naturally would not rashly intervene in this kind of matter. "Heh, it's just a joke, don't take it so seriously," Gui Zhu chuckled. "But you don't need to belittle yourself, boy. You were able to seriously injure this shocking void beast, so this old master has some idea of your strength." Yang Kai rubbed his nose but did not respond. As the two of them spoke, the shocking void beast had already been tortured to the point of being unable to bear the sight of it. Countless human faces that seemed like spirits were pouncing and biting its body, devouring its flesh, blood, and essence, causing its body to ceaselessly shrivel up. However, no matter how it struggled, it was unable to escape the envelopment of the black veil of light, so all its resistance was in vain. By this time, the shocking void beast's screams had gradually become inaudible and its struggles had also become weaker and weaker. After a while, the shocking void beast finally stopped moving, leaving behind only the countless ghostly faces that howled and shuttled through the black curtain, a terrifying sight to behold. Gui Zhu stretched out his hand and the black curtain immediately turned into a black flag that flew back into his hand. Seeing this black flag, Yang Kai suddenly understood. He had seen Gui Zhu use this black flag-like artifact back on the floating continent, but at that time, how could this artifact possess such power? It was obvious that Gui Zhu had used some unknown method to greatly enhance this artifact's power over the years. The black banner flew back, and the black curtain that covered the sky also disappeared. Only the shriveled body of the shocking void beast was left behind. As the wind blew, the shocking void beast's fur actually turned into powder, revealing the bones inside. Its bones seemed to have become extremely fragile and under the influence of external forces, they were reduced to dust. Amidst the dust, there was only a small rolling object about the size of a fist that exuded an inexplicable luster. Yang Kai's eyes lit up as he stared at this object with fiery eyes. Gui Zhu chuckled, stretched out his hand, and sent this object flying over to Yang Kai. "If you want it, just tell this old master, what's there to be embarrassed about?" Yang Kai couldn't help feeling overjoyed and quickly accepted the monster core. After examining it for a while, he confirmed that it was indeed the monster core of a shocking void beast and that it was completely undamaged. The energy contained in this monster core had not leaked out in the slightest before smiling and saying, "Many thanks, Senior. It was yours to begin with." Gui Zhu didn't care. This old master also knows that you are proficient in the Tao of space, so naturally, you would leave this monster core behind. With it, your attainments in the Tao of space will be further improved, yes? Yang Kai didn't conceal anything and nodded. My purpose in coming here was to obtain this shocking void beast's monster core, and now I've obtained what I wanted." "Boy, your courage is quite big, daring to enter this damned place." Gui Zhu looked at Yang Kai with some admiration. "Since you've obtained what you wanted, I wonder if you can help this old master achieve the same? What can Senior help with?" "If this junior can help, he will not refuse." Yang Kai carefully put away the shocking void beast's monster core before turning to Gui Zhu with a solemn expression. Although Gui Zhu didn't look like a good person, to be honest, he gave Yang Kai a good feeling. Especially after this meeting, Gui Zhu seemed quite approachable and amiable, so Yang Kai decided to return the favor. Chapter 1772. What's more, Gui Zhu was so powerful that even Ni Guang feared him, so building a good relationship with him was not a bad thing. Perhaps Yang Kai would need his help in the future. There is a place that requires your help to enter," Gui Zhu nodded. "With this old master's strength alone, he doesn't dare to rush in." "Come with me." Gui Zhu was a straightforward person, so after saying so, he led the way. Yang Kai stretched out his hand and supported Shui Yu on his back so that she could lean better against him before hurriedly following. Along the way, after chatting for a while, Yang Kai learned that Gui Zhu had been following him since the moment he entered the Severed World. After all, there were many void cracks inside the Severed World, and only those who were proficient in Space Force could travel through them safely. Gui Zhu happened to know that Yang Kai had great attainments in the Tao of Space. Gui Zhu's original plan was to find an opportunity to abduct Yang Kai from Ni Guang and Luolan and then take him to explore the Severed World together, but after entering here, he was unable to find Yang Kai immediately and only vaguely determined the direction Yang Kai was heading, so he had been tailing him. However, there was an accident later and he lost track of Yang Kai. That was until just now when Yang Kai suddenly rushed out of a void crack and appeared in front of him. It seems that Senior and I are fated to meet, Yang Kai laughed after listening to his explanation. The void crack that connected the Severed World to the void crack was impossible to predict. The shocking void beast had been injured and fled, but it just so happened to appear in front of Gui Zhu. This old master was also quite surprised. I thought that I couldn't count on you. Gui Zhu wrapped himself in black qi again. No one could see his face clearly, but from his tone, it was clear that this encounter was a pleasant surprise for Gui Zhu. By the way, Senior, where are you taking me? A medicine valley. Gui Zhu ran ahead and replied without turning his head. When this old man passed by that place, I saw many rare spirit herbs. Unfortunately, that damned place is full of spatial cracks. This old man didn't dare to rashly enter. I only collected a few enlightenment flowers before I had to retreat. Enlightenment flower. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Enlightenment flower. That was an origin-grade mid-rank spirit herb. Moreover, there were only a few of them in the entire territory of the Star Realm. This was because the laws of heaven and earth were not suitable for the growth of this kind of ancient spirit herb. Only in the environment of ancient times could the enlightenment flower survive. In the Severed World, it could be said that there was a trace of ancient aura everywhere, so it was not surprising that there were enlightenment flowers here. It was an ancient spirit herb. Whether it was used to refine the enlightenment pill or consumed directly, it was of great help to an Origin King realm cultivator in improving their strength and state of mind. No wonder even with Gui Zhu's cultivation, he could not forget that place. It turned out that he had obtained several enlightenment flowers there. In addition to the enlightenment flowers, there are many other good things there. There are some things this old master does not recognize, but that is definitely a paradise for an Origin King realm cultivator. If I can really obtain enough benefits from that place, this old master is confident he can break through to the Third Order Origin King realm in this lifetime. Gui Zhu's voice contained a hint of fanaticism. Hearing him say this, Yang Kai's brow rose as he secretly speculated that Gui Zhu should already be a second-order Origin King. Otherwise, he would not have said he wanted to break through to the Third Order. It seemed that Ni Guang's fear of him was not unreasonable. After this old master withdrew from that place, he wanted to see if he could find you. If there is anyone here who can safely enter that medicine valley, I'm afraid it's you. This old master did not have much hope, It can only be said that this old master's luck was quite good, Gui Zhu said. Then it should be the Medicine Valley Uncle Ni was talking about. As soon as Gui Zhu's voice fell, Shui Yu's voice came from behind Yang Kai. Her voice was still a little weak, but it did not sound like she had suffered any serious injuries. You're awake. Yang Kai turned his head and glanced at her, finding that Shui Yu's face had become much rosier. It seemed that her healing secret technique was indeed quite extraordinary, allowing her to stabilize her injuries in such a short time. I was in a daze a moment ago, but now I'm awake, Shui Yu nodded. She did not show any intention of getting down from Yang Kai's back, instead hugging him tighter, enjoying the warmth of Yang Kai's care. She then glanced at Gui Zhu suspiciously and asked Yang Kai vigilantly, This is Senior Gui Zhu. Yang Kai chuckled. Don't worry, Senior and I are old acquaintances. Jie. Gui Zhu laughed strangely. Little girl, you are young, but you have many thoughts. If this old master really wanted to kill you, would you still be alive? Rest assured, as your sweetheart said, We are old acquaintances. Encountering each other in this damned place can be considered an old acquaintance. This old master has no malice towards you. Hearing the word sweetheart, Shueyu's neck could not help blushing slightly, but a smile appeared at the corners of her mouth as she softly said, Senior is magnanimous. This little girl is currently injured, so please forgive her for not being able to greet you properly. It's fine, it's fine. Guizhu did not care, glancing at Shueyu thoughtfully. But little girl, you are Shueyu of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce, right? Shueyu's expression could not help changing, but she quickly recovered and nodded. How did Senior see through me? She had used an artifact to change her appearance and physique, so her appearance in front of others was completely different from her original one. What's more, this artifact was made by an artifact refining Grandmaster of Hengluo Chamber of Commerce, so unless one had a peak third-order origin king cultivation, it would be impossible to see through it. Shueyu did not know how Guizhu had seen through her identity at a glance. This old master is not a fool, Guizhu chuckled. Guizhu chuckled, there are only a few people who have entered the severed world, and you're wearing the same clothes as Shueyu and just called out Uncle Ni. If this old master still didn't know about you, wouldn't this old master have lived all these years in vain? Guizhu said with a look of relief. He had been very curious about the origins of the woman Yang Kai was carrying. After all, when he entered the severed world before, he had not seen her. Later on, through various clues, he finally understood. So that's how it is. Shueyu nodded, understanding that Guizhu being able to recognize her was not because he was powerful, but because she had exposed too many flaws. The dignified Hengluo Chamber of Commerce's third young master is actually a woman. That's quite surprising. Guizhu clicked his tongue in wonder. Senior, Shueyu has some secrets, so she doesn't want anyone to know her identity as a woman, so I hope Senior can keep this a secret. Yang Kai chuckled meaningfully. You also know how big Hengluo Chamber of Commerce is. If this matter were to spread, this old master is not a gossipy person. Guizhu smiled contemptuously. Whether she's a man or a woman has nothing to do with this old master. Many thanks, Senior. Shueyu bit her red lips lightly and thanked him. After thinking about it for a moment, she leaned over to Yang Kai and whispered into his ear, I'd better change my appearance, otherwise, if I meet someone again, they may see through my disguise again. As you wish. Yang Kai nodded. Shueyu stretched out her hand and tapped a certain part of her chest, pushing her Saint Qi into the artifact she wore to change her appearance and body shape once again, transforming her into her previous male appearance. Little girl, what you said just now, does your Hengluo Chamber of Commerce know where the Medicine Valley is? Guizhu asked again. Shueyu nodded gently. Shueyu gently nodded. Our Hengluo Chamber of Commerce has known about the existence of that Medicine Valley for a long time. Every time the severed world opens, some people will come and occasionally obtain some gains. However, because there are too many void cracks in that place, no one dares to venture too deep. Our original goal was that Medicine Valley, but we encountered many illusionary void butterflies and got separated from Uncle Ni. So it's not a secret. Guizhu was disappointed. Young boy, it looks like we'll have to speed up, otherwise, if someone else gets there first, we won't even be able to drink the soup. Let this old master carry you. Saying so, Guizhu formed a seal with his hands and summoned his 10,000 soul banner. In the next moment, the 10,000 soul banner wrapped the three of them up and transformed into a streak of black light that shot forward at double their original speed. Guizhu being able to discover this Medicine Valley was a coincidence. He did not have any special purpose in entering the severed world, only hearing that there were many good things here that could help Origin King Realm Masters enhance their strength, so he took the risk to explore. While tracking down Yang Kai, Guizhu happened to pass by the Medicine Valley and found several enlightenment flowers. Unfortunately, even with his powerful strength, he did not dare to rush in and could only reluctantly retreat. Now that he had brought Yang Kai with him, Guizhu was naturally complacent and was ready to go in and wash the place in blood. The Medicine Valley was not too far from where he met Yang Kai, but it was definitely not close either. It took the three of them a full day to reach their destination. The 10,000 soul banner was withdrawn, revealing the figures of the three. However, after Guizhu released his divine sense to investigate the surroundings, his face could not help sinking as he coldly snorted. Sure enough, there are many people here. Within a 100-kilometer radius of this place, there were many origin kings gathered. Yang Kai did not know how these people learned about this place, or if, like Gui Zhu, they had stumbled upon this place. Yang Kai only glanced around casually when he saw the figures of Purple Star's sect master, Zi Long, and young master, Zi Dong. Both of them had the same long purple hair and were extremely conspicuous on a small hillside. In addition to them, Xu Wei, who had plotted against Yang Kai before, was also here. Even Kong Fa had come. The two of them were still in cahoots, but Kong Fa seemed to be seriously injured, his face slightly pale. It seemed that under the attack of the illusionary void butterflies, he had not been able to gain any advantage and had barely managed to preserve his life. Xueyu. Not far to the right, a nervous and joyful voice called out. Yang Kai turned his head and found that Ni Guang was rushing over while staring vigilantly at Gui Zhu. Behind him, Luo Lan followed closely. Chapter 1773. Uncle Ni. Xueyu called out in surprise from Yang Kai's back. In this damned place, there was nothing happier than seeing one's loved ones. Although she felt at ease when she was with Yang Kai, she was still worried about Ni Guang's safety. Now that she saw Ni Guang unharmed, Xueyu naturally relaxed. What's going on here? Ni Guang didn't walk too close and instead stood about 10 meters away from Yang Kai and the others, asking while looking at Gui Zhu vigilantly. He was afraid that Yang Kai and Xueyu had been captured by Gui Zhu, and if that were the case, his actions would definitely be restricted. Ni Guang not having such thoughts wasn't because he wanted to be cautious, but rather because Gui Zhu was obviously an evil person. Anyone with a little common sense would think so. Uncle Ni doesn't need to worry, I'm just a little injured, it's nothing serious, Xueyu answered as she slid down from Yang Kai's back. Hearing what she said, Ni Guang's expression relaxed slightly as he looked at Yang Kai, then at Xueyu, and finally at Gui Zhu. After confirming that the other party had not done anything to Xueyu, Ni Guang cupped his fist slightly and asked, "May I ask who this friend is?" In any case, Gui Zhu had come with Xueyu, so Ni Guang had to ask about the other party's identity. Gui Zhu laughed strangely, his laughter extremely harsh. "You don't need to ask this old master's name or origin. This old master has no intention of joining forces with you. Take your family's juniors and do what you need to do. There's no need to pay attention to this old master." He didn't put Ni Guang in his eyes at all, his tone extremely arrogant and annoying. Yang Kai rubbed his nose to the side. Ni Guang's face couldn't help sinking slightly as he snorted, his expression extremely displeased. He held a high position in Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce and was well known throughout the entire Star Territory. Those with lower cultivation than him all treated him with respect, and even those with the same cultivation as him, with the exception of Zi Long and a few others, no one dared to be so rude to him. Gui Zhu's words obviously made him a little unhappy. As such, he immediately lost interest in chatting with Xueyu and said coldly, "Let's go." Xueyu opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She just glanced at Yang Kai and said, "You have to be careful." Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "You too." With the current situation, it was impossible for him to stay with Xueyu. Xueyu would definitely follow Ni Guang while he would act together with Gui Zhu. "Yang Kai, you're not coming?" Luo Lan seemed to have noticed something and asked in surprise. Yang Kai shook his head, pondered for a moment, and said, "I have some matters to attend to with this Senior Luo. I'm afraid our previous agreement will be voided. If there's a chance in the future, I'll make it up to you." "So that's how it is." Luo Lan smiled. "It's fine. I wasn't fully prepared this time, and I've dragged you down. Since you've received help from a benefactor, then, I wish you good luck." She had a very amiable look on her face. She did not blame Yang Kai for suddenly changing his mind and not acting with her. Little brat, asking a tiger for its skin is destined to not have a good end. Think about it carefully. Ni Guang glanced at Yang Kai coldly and secretly warned him. "Many thanks for Senior's concern, Junior understands." Yang Kai cupped his fists. Gui Zhu laughed strangely to the side, making him even more obvious that he was not a good person. Ni Guang and Luolan took Shueyu back to where they were originally. On the way, Ni Guang naturally asked about the situation after they separated, but Shueyu did not say much. She only told Ni Guang that she and Yang Kai had spent a lot of effort to get rid of the illusionary void butterflies and then encountered Gui Zhu. As for what happened in the void, Shueyu did not dare to say anything. This person is called Gui Zhu. Ni Guang frowned. Why have I never heard of such a character in Star Territory? Elder Luo, have you ever heard of this person? This mistress has never heard of him. Luolan shook her head. Strange. How could a second-order origin king remain unknown all this time? Especially since this person's aura is so special. Ni Guang Yu couldn't figure out why he had never heard of the name Gui Zhu before. This person seemed to have jumped out of a rock without any warning, but his sudden appearance was simply too shocking. Uncle Ni, what's the situation here? Shueyu asked in a timely manner. The situation doesn't look good. That bastard Kong Fa followed this old master and Elder Luo all the way to this medicine valley. After he arrived here, he used a secret technique to call Shu Wei over. Zilong already knew the location of this medicine valley, and old man Meng Tong also came here. I don't know where he got this information from, but he also came here. Meng Tong. Shueyu frowned as she turned her eyes in a certain direction and saw a short old man squinting his eyes and looking around like a thief, looking quite comical. However, this person was a genuine Origin King Realm Master, and although he was only a First-Order Origin King, he was at the peak of the First Order. It was rumored that Meng Tong had broken through to the Origin King realm 1,000 years ago, but had never had the opportunity to break through to the Second Order. If he could obtain some kind of opportunity, breaking through would only take a blink of an eye. Meng Tong's origins were very mysterious, and no one knew where he came from. What's more, this person had not attached himself to any great force and had always cultivated alone. It was extremely difficult for a cultivator who did not belong to any sect to cultivate to a high realm because there was no one to guide them, so they had to rely on themselves to find their way forward. It was very likely that they would make mistakes along the path of cultivation and fall short of success. Not to mention this, a cultivator who did not belong to any sect had no resources to rely on, so they had to rely on themselves to find what they needed to cultivate, wasting a lot of time. As such, the achievements of such a cultivator would generally not be too high. Being able to cultivate to the origin returning realm was already quite remarkable. Meng Tong, on the other hand, was an origin king. It could be seen that his luck and opportunities in this life were quite good, and coupled with his perseverance and perception, he was able to achieve his current achievements. Therefore, although Meng Tong's cultivation was not the highest in Star Territory, his reputation was quite high. This was because the cultivator who did not belong to any sect regarded him as a goal to strive for and an object of worship, and the base number of such cultivators was very large. Purple Star, Sword Union, Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, all the great forces in the starfield had once extended an olive branch to Meng Tong, wanting to recruit him, promising him great benefits and the status of an elder. Unfortunately, Meng Tong had never agreed to any of them and had always been a lone wolf, not even accepting a disciple. In a sense, he was another legend in Star Territory. He did not become hostile to any great force, nor did he get too close to any of them, living a very comfortable life. Sometimes, Ni Guang envied Meng Tong's life and yearned for it. However, if he really had to abandon everything and live like Meng Tong, he would not be willing. Among the cultivator who entered the Severed World this time, Meng Tong was also among them, and he had even come to the treasure house of the Severed World. No matter how he came here, it was obvious that his luck was extraordinary. Counting Meng Tong and Gui Zhu, who had just arrived, there were as many as 7 origin kings present. This number accounted for at least 60% to 70% of the cultivator who entered the Severed World, and if those who died in the Severed World were also counted, the origin kings who came to the Medicine Valley might account for 80% of the total number of people still alive. The spirit medicines in the periphery of the Medicine Valley have been divided up. Ni Guang gestured to the huge mountain valley ahead. Divided up? Shueyu was stunned. How was the harvest? Ni Guang smiled slightly. Not bad. Although there weren't many, all of them were rare treasures. While the two were talking, Luolan also touched her space ring, as if she had gained a lot. The remaining spirit medicines are hidden inside, but we can't enter for the time being. Ni Guang continued. Shui Yu stared at the huge mountain valley in front of her and saw that it was shrouded in a dazzling seven-colored light. This light was like flowing water that filled the entire mountain valley, making it look like the huge medicine valley was covered in a multicolored tide. Shui Yu felt a fatal threat from the light that seemed to have condensed into a solid substance. Seven-colored radiant light? Shui Yu's face sank as she called out the name of this seven-colored light. Given her status, it was obvious that she knew something about the Medicine Valley. Indeed. Ni Guang gently nodded. This is the seven-colored radiant light produced by the divine bird, the seven-colored radiant peacock. This light ignores all defenses, and whether it is artifacts, secret techniques, or spiritual energy, nothing can stop it. Once enveloped in this light, no matter how high one's cultivation is, it will not take long for them to die. It is extremely terrifying. Then how do we get in? Luolan asked worriedly. Although she had followed Ni Guang here a long time ago and had some gains, she still knew nothing about this place. This was the first time she had heard of the seven-colored radiant peacock, and the first time she had heard of the seven-colored radiant light. This light that even Ni Guang felt powerless against was something she could not resolve. Wait. Ni Guang quickly said, this light is produced by the divine bird when it breathes in. Once it absorbs it back, we can enter. Inside this medicine valley, there are countless void cracks. Although there are dangers everywhere, these void cracks are also the best natural barriers. When it breathes out again and spits out the seven-colored radiant light, we only need to find a void crack, hide behind it, and rely on the existence of this void crack to avoid it. Hearing what he said, Luolan showed a look of sudden realization. While explaining, Ni Guang suddenly frowned and turned a serious look towards Shui Yu. What's wrong? Shui Yu wore a stunned expression. Ni Guang did not speak but instead stared intently at a certain part of her hair. A moment later, he suddenly snorted coldly, gritted his teeth, and shouted, "Despicable." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and sent out a stream of pure energy towards Shui Yu. Chapter 1774. Facing Ni Guang's sudden attack, Shui Yu stood in place and did not move. She believed that Ni Guang would not harm her, and her uncle Ni must have his reasons for doing so. Xiao. A strong gust of wind brushed past Shui Yu's head, but before the attack could reach her, a wisp of black qi suddenly flew out from Shui Yu's hair, circled in the air slightly, and shot towards Guizhu like an arrow from a bow. This black qi fled so fast that even Ni Guang could not stop it in time. He could clearly see that this wisp of black qi was humanoid with a distorted face, like a ghost. It had been hiding in Shui Yu's hair all this time, but because it was also black and its aura was concealed, even Ni Guang had not noticed it at first. By the time he noticed, it was already too late. The wisp of black qi quickly arrived in front of Guizhu, and with a strange laugh, Guizhu opened his mouth and swallowed it into his abdomen. Don't you think your Excellency's actions are too shameless? Ni Guang looked at Guizhu from afar and shouted coldly. He. Guizhu still laughed strangely. This old master does not need others to comment on his actions. Ni Guang's face became gloomy as he stared at Guizhu for a while before waving his hand and saying, "This king won't bicker with you now, but I'll definitely ask you for advice some other day." Although he did not believe that Guizhu had done something to Shui Yu, now was obviously not the time to fight with Guizhu. While this conflict was taking place, Zilong, who was not far away, had been watching with great interest, seemingly eager to see Ni Guang and Guizhu fight. Ni Guang naturally would not let him do as he wished. What's more, with his eyesight, he could see that Guizhu had not harmed Shui Yu and had only done so to eavesdrop on her. Finished speaking. With a cold expression, Yang Kai turned to the Medicine Valley. "Young boy, did you hear what they said just now?" On the other side, Guizhu whispered to Yang Kai. "I heard." Yang Kai looked surprised. "Senior, when did you leave that thing on Shui Yu?" Shui Yu had been on his back all this time. He had not noticed when Guizhu had done something. When this old master handed you the shocking void beast's monster core, Guizhu smiled triumphantly. What? Are you dissatisfied with me for doing this? That's not true. Yongkai chuckled. I just feel that Senior is really far-sighted. Guizhu laughed. Don't try to flatter this old master. It's just that this old master is all alone and needs to be vigilant. Since you've heard what they said just now, then, this old man is counting on you. I'll try my best. Yongkai nodded and didn't speak too confidently. Outside the Medicine Valley, there was a moment of silence as all the Origin Kings waited quietly like purple dragons. Ni Guang knew what to do next, while Kong Fa, Shu Wei, and Meng Tong might not know much about this place, but they were all Origin Kings with extraordinary observation and analytical abilities, so even if they did not know how to safely enter the mountain valley, they would still be able to do so. After Ni Guang and Zilong took action, they would be able to see some clues. Shu Wei glanced over at Yongkai from time to time, wondering how Yongkai and Shui Yu managed to survive while surrounded by so many illusionary void butterflies. At that time, he had borrowed the two of them to delay the illusionary void butterflies while he took the opportunity to escape, thinking that these two juniors would definitely die. How could he have imagined that a few days later, he would see them appear in front of him unscathed? Shu Wei could only attribute their survival to Guizhu, who had come with them, thinking that Guizhu had appeared and saved them. Time passed by. About an hour later, from a certain location in the huge mountain valley in front of them, a strange sound suddenly rang out. That sound was like the sound of something inhaling when it was asleep. This sound was like a rolling thunder, like a drum, and was both dull and shocking. Almost all of the Origin Kings present were shocked. The moment they heard this sound, all of them could not help frowning. As for Ni Guang, Luo Lan, Zilong, and the others, their spirits shook as they secretly pushed their Saint Qi. The next moment though, a sudden change occurred. The originally calm mountain valley was suddenly swept up by a gust of wind. This gust of wind came from the outside and blew straight into the depths of the mountain valley. At the same time, the sound of inhalation became more and more obvious. Accompanied by this sound, the seven-colored radiant light that had been shrouding the mountain valley seemed to be attracted by something and receded like a tide. In the blink of an eye, the scenery outside the mountain valley was exposed to everyone's vision. Xio xio xio. At that moment, Ni Guang, Luo Lan, and Zilong, the three Origin Kings, all shot out like arrows from a bow, chasing after the receding seven-colored radiant light and rushing into the mountain valley. Seeing them move, Kong Fa, Shu Wei, and Meng Tong, who had been watching from the sidelines, could no longer hold back and used their movement skills, transforming into streams of light that shot off in different directions. Guizhu also laughed as he summoned his 10,000 soul banner, wrapped Yongkai in it, and rushed forward. His cultivation was profound, and among all the Origin Kings present, only Ni Guang and Zilong could compare to him, so his speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed a distance of 10 kilometers. Inside the mountain valley, there were countless void cracks, large and small, scattered everywhere. These cracks were like scars in the heavens and earth, eternally adorning the landscape. There were even more void cracks that were hidden. Some could be detected by divine sense while others were completely untraceable. Ni Guang and Zilong both carried artifacts that could detect void cracks, and at this moment, both of them were relying on these artifacts to push forward, constantly changing direction to avoid the location of void cracks. As for the other Origin Kings who were not prepared in advance, they released their divine senses to the greatest extent to avoid danger. After only 10 breaths of time, the difference in speed between everyone was obvious. Although they rushed into the mountain valley almost at the same time, Ni Guang and Zilong were undoubtedly far ahead. Guizhu's speed was even more exaggerated. With Yongkai pointing the way for him, he did not need to worry about the threat of void cracks at all. All he needed to do was follow the direction Yongkai pointed out, so it only took him a short time to overtake Ni Guang and Zilong, leaving them far behind. That bastard! Zilong looked at Guizhu's figure in the distance and could not help cursing. It was unknown how many years it would take for the severed world to open. The spirit grasses and medicines contained inside were all ancient species that had long since gone extinct. Every time the severed world opened, This medicine valley would produce a large number of rare herbs. It could be said that whoever had the advantage in speed would be able to reap the best harvest. Zilong had thought that his biggest competitor this time would be Ni Guang, but he had not expected that Gui Zhu would suddenly appear out of nowhere and catch him off guard. Does that idiot want to die? Zidong, who was following Zilong, also looked forward in amazement, rushing so fast. Once he touches a hidden void crack, even if he's an origin king, he won't be able to bear the consequences. Don't worry about him. Zilong coldly snorted. If he wants to court death, let him. Yes. Zidong thought about it for a moment and agreed. Those who rushed quickly in this medicine valley might not necessarily have good harvests, and they might even die quickly. Immediately, Zidong calmed down. On the other side, Ni Guang, who was almost at the same pace as Zilong, also shook his head and sighed. Shuiyu, I'm afraid that little brat's fate is grim. That guy named Gui Zhu doesn't know how dangerous this place is, so how could he have a good end? That shouldn't be the case. Shuiyu shook her head. Shuiyu shook her head. She knew what Yang Kai and Gui Zhu were relying on, but she didn't explain. Only Luo Lan sighed softly. If Yang Kai had been present at this time, the situation would have been much better, but unfortunately, Yang Kai was not with her. It's about time. Releasing his divine sense and confirming that there was no one within a few dozen kilometers, Gui Zhu suddenly reduced his speed, revealing himself and Yang Kai. Kchem. There's a medicinal fragrance. Yang Kai suddenly sniffed and said in shock. Heh, it looks like we've already gained something. Gui Zhu chuckled and then turned serious. Gui Zhu chuckled before his expression became solemn and he said, Young boy, this old master will tell you first, whatever we find in this medicine valley, we'll split it evenly. This old master won't take advantage of you, what do you think? As senior says, Yang Kai nodded readily. In this kind of place, although Gui Zhu had to rely heavily on Yang Kai's attainments in the Tao of space, that did not mean that without Yang Kai, Gui Zhu would be unable to move freely. It was just that if he was alone, his speed would be much slower. So, for Gui Zhu, the proposal of dividing the harvest equally was a bit of a loss, so of course Yang Kai wouldn't object. Over there. Yang Kai confirmed the source of the medicinal fragrance before suddenly pointing in a certain direction. As soon as he said so, he rushed over with Gui Zhu following closely behind. A dozen breaths later, the two of them arrived in front of a fruit tree that was only about half the height of a person. The branches and leaves on the fruit tree were not dense, and were even somewhat sparse. There were only a few scattered conical leaves, and the branches of the fruit tree also seemed to be too weak to withstand the wind. On the branches of this fruit tree, 4 maroon fruits the size of a baby's fist hung neatly. The fruits shone with light, and the skin of the fruit was crystal clear. One could see the sweet flesh inside, and it was enough to make one's appetite whet at a glance. An inexplicable aura lingered around these 4 fruits, as if they were emitting it from their own bodies. Gui Zhu's whole body was wrapped in black qi, but his eyes seemed to shine brightly as they shone brightly. At a glance, he could tell that these 4 fruits were extraordinary. These were definitely spirit fruits that would greatly enhance his strength. Divine Nirvana fruit. Yang Kai had been observing this fruit for a long time, and at the same time, his knowledge of the various spirit grasses and medicines he had mastered in his mind. After a while, he finally confirmed what these fruits were and could not help muttering to himself. These are divine nirvana fruits. Gui Zhu raised his brow and asked in surprise, the kind of spirit fruit that can be used to refine the great nirvana pill? He had obviously heard of the divine nirvana fruit before and knew what kind of pill it could be used to refine. Chapter 1775. There's no mistake, this is definitely the divine nirvana fruit. Yang Kai grinned. Between heaven and earth, all kinds of spirit flowers and grasses, as long as their names contain the word holy or Tao, are precious treasures. When they grow, they attract the world principles around them, making their growth extremely difficult. If the conditions are not met, they will wither and die. But once they mature, they will contain a trace of principal strength, so whether they are swallowed directly or refined into pills, they are of great use to Origin King. Senior, our luck isn't bad. Boy, You know a lot about spirit medicines. Guizhu was in a good mood and glanced at Yang Kai with surprise. I know a little, Yang Kai chuckled. Ian, there are exactly 4 of them. As we agreed just now, you and I will each take half, Guizhu said as he reached out to grab the divine nirvana fruit that was close to him. Wait. Yang Kai hurriedly stopped him. What's wrong? Guizhu looked at him suspiciously. Senior, although collecting the divine nirvana fruit like this isn't a big problem, if you don't properly store it, the loss of its medicinal efficacies will be serious, Yang Kai reminded. Chem? How should I store it then? Guizhu asked humbly. He knew that some rare flowers and grasses needed to be preserved in special ways to prevent their medicinal efficacies from dissipating. The divine nirvana fruit was extremely valuable, so the loss of its medicinal efficacies was an unimaginable loss. Listening to Yang Kai's tone, he obviously knew how to preserve it, so Guizhu naturally had to ask. It's simple, just put it in a metal attribute box. Yang Kai smiled and explained, Senior, look, the area where the divine nirvana fruit grows is filled with a rich metal attribute aura. If my guess is correct, there should be a mineral load below this fruit tree, and the divine nirvana fruit tree is dependent on this mineral load to grow. According to its growth habits, we just need to find the right medicine. So that's how it is. Guizhu gently nodded. Among the 5 elements, metal suppressed wood, so it was reasonable to use a metal attribute box to store the divine nirvana fruit. It was just that, this fruit tree actually grew on top of an ore vein, which was somewhat inconceivable. Guizhu naturally didn't care about this and simply took out a crimson metal box from his space ring before turning to Yang Kai and asking, Is there any problem with this thing? A box made of dark gold. Senior actually has such a good item. Of course there's no problem. If you place the divine nirvana fruit inside, even after 1,000 years, its medicinal efficacy won't fade. Yang Kai nodded. If that's the case, then this old man won't hold back. Guizhu laughed heartily as he picked up the 2 divine nirvana fruits and carefully placed them into his netherworld gold box. Take good care of it. Yang Kai also picked up the remaining 2 divine nirvana fruits. Although he didn't have a treasure like the netherworld gold box, as an alchemist, he was naturally equipped with a variety of containers for storing herbs. Naturally, he didn't lack metal attribute containers. After splitting the 4 divine nirvana fruits, the 2 of them excitedly set off again while avoiding the spatial cracks around them. At the same time, they searched for ancient spirit medicines scattered throughout this medicine valley. This medicine valley was extremely huge, and no one knew exactly how large it was. In any case, after Yang Kai and Guizhu rushed in, they hadn't seen anyone else, so they had no idea where they had gone. Moreover, it was extremely convenient to search for spirit medicines in this place because the spirit medicines here were all extremely old and constantly exuded medicinal fragrances. As long as one followed the source of these fragrances, they would be able to find something. Half an hour later, the 2 of them once again used this characteristic to find a palm-sized spirit mushroom. This spirit mushroom grew in a crack in the rocks and was extremely difficult to find. If it weren't for the rich medicinal fragrance, the 2 of them would have missed it. Demon melting mushroom. Now, without Yang Kai's reminder, Guizhu recognized the name of this spirit medicine and couldn't help feeling excited. This is actually a demon melting mushroom. Hehehe, this old master's luck is really good. Congratulations, Senior. This demon melting mushroom seems to be at least 2,000 years old. If it was used to refine a demon suppressing pill, I estimate that even origin kings would fight over it. Yang Kai cupped his fists and said with a smile. Guizhu glanced at Yang Kai and said, Good, this thing is of great use to this old master, so this old master will take it first. If we find anything else later, no matter what it is, you'll get an extra share. Young boy, is that all right with you? Naturally, Yang Kai replied straightforwardly. The main role of the demon melting mushroom was to resolve heart demons. When a cultivator was cultivating or breaking through, heart demons would occasionally appear. These heart demons were the negative shadows that lurked in everyone's heart. Seeing the strong bully the weak and not pulling out a blade to help out of fear could become a heart demon. Being bullied and not being able to take revenge could become a heart demon. The death of one's beloved and the depression in one's heart could also become a heart demon. Heart demons was a general term that encompassed the various flaws and negative emotions in a cultivator's heart. They were extremely harmful. Normally, heart demons wouldn't have much of an impact on a cultivator, but as a cultivator's strength increased, the degree of harm from heart demons would also increase, especially when breaking through. The power of heart demons would be infinitely magnified, and once they couldn't be suppressed, the breakthrough would fail. In the best-case scenario, one's cultivation would fall, and in the worst-case scenario, one would become the demon race and be consigned to eternal damnation. Therefore, when a high-level cultivator attempted to break through, they would be fully prepared. One of these preparations was to prevent and resolve heart demons. The simplest method was to take some spirit pills. Demon-suppressing pills refined from demon-melting mushrooms were the best pills for suppressing heart demons. Even if they weren't refined into pills, simply taking a piece of demon-melting mushroom in one's mouth would have a miraculous effect when breaking through. Gui Zhu was now a second-order origin king, so if he wanted to break through to the third-order origin king realm, it would be extremely difficult. Moreover, based on Gui Zhu's life experience, he had yet to exact his revenge and was cultivating a demonic art, so the power of his heart demons was definitely not small. In this world, only the demon-melting mushroom could suppress the heart demons in his heart. That was why he made such a proposal. Of course, Yang Kai wouldn't refuse. Gui Zhu treated the demon-melting mushroom as a treasure, but Yang Kai didn't care much. In High Heaven Sect's Ascending Dragon Temple, there was a supreme treasure like the 10,000-year incense. The function of this 10,000-year incense was to resolve heart demons, and its effect was even stronger than that of the demon-suppressing pill. In other words, the demon-melting mushroom was useless to Yang Kai. This old master will remember this favor, Gui Zhu said solemnly. Gui Zhu said solemnly before harvesting the demon-melting mushroom. While doing so, he consulted Yang Kai and asked if the demon-melting mushroom needed to be preserved using any special methods. After learning that it wasn't necessary, he began harvesting it. While Gui Zhu was harvesting the demon-melting mushroom, Yang Kai, who had been standing nearby, suddenly changed his expression and whispered, "Senior, do you hear something?" Gui Zhu was startled and listened carefully. A moment later, both he and Yang Kai's faces changed drastically as they both shouted, "Not good, the seven-colored radiant light." The sound of breathing came from somewhere in the distance, and along with this strange movement, the Medicine Valley shook slightly. Looking around, in the direction of the sound's source, a seven-colored light spread out like a tide and covered the entire Medicine Valley, just as it had just retreated. "Where are the void cracks?" Gui Zhu immediately looked at Yang Kai and asked nervously. There were originally countless void cracks nearby, but now none were visible. In desperation, Gui Zhu could only pin his hopes on Yang Kai. The seven-colored radiant light was the aura of the seven-colored radiant peacock divine bird. It was capable of eroding one's soul, corroding one's physique, and ignoring all defenses. Even Gui Zhu was not confident he could resist the seven-colored radiant light. The only way to avoid it was to rely on the void cracks here. Over here. Yang Kai didn't show any signs of panic, seemingly having a card up his sleeve as he beckoned to Gui Zhu and quickly shot towards a certain spot in the sky. Gui Zhu's figure flickered as he transformed into a streak of black light and followed closely behind. A moment later, the two stood motionless somewhere in the void. Are there really void cracks here? Gui Zhu looked around and saw the seven-colored radiant light from the depths of the Medicine Valley getting closer and closer, about to completely cover this place, causing him to panic. Naturally there are. Yang Kai smiled lightly. Senior doesn't need to be nervous, Junior won't play around with his life. This void crack is quite big, about this long. Yang Kai gestured as he spoke. Seeing him speak so confidently, Gui Zhu felt a little relieved. At that moment, the seven-colored radiant light swept over. Although he had received Yang Kai's assurance, watching the terrifying seven-colored radiant light approach him still caused Gui Zhu to break out in a cold sweat. Since breaking through to the Origin King realm, he had not felt such fear for a long time. Without making a sound, The seven-colored radiant light swept past the place where the two were standing and quickly filled the entire Medicine Valley. Where Yang Kai and Gui Zhu were standing, there was a narrow strip of land about 5 meters in length that was not filled by the seven-colored radiant light. The terrifying seven-colored radiant light seemed to rush into a bottomless abyss in front of this strip of land and disappear, leaving behind a safe space behind. Gui Zhu breathed a long sigh of relief and finally relaxed. Yang Kai was right, there was indeed a void crack here. Even though he was so close before, he had not been able to detect it, but now, the seven-colored radiant light had outlined its existence. Whether it was its shape or size, it was exactly the same as Yang Kai's. Looking at Yang Kai beside him, Gui Zhu's gaze became slightly complicated. He had studied the Tao of space before and knew how difficult it was to cultivate. He had stayed on the floating continent for 2,000 years and had not even been able to reach the threshold, but Yang Kai was able to achieve such amazing accomplishments in this territory. Comparing the two, Gui Zhu felt that his own aptitude was simply unsightly. Moreover, when he met Yang Kai, he was only a first-order saint, but now he was already a third-order origin returning realm cultivator. This cultivation speed was so fast that it was likely few in the entire star territory could match him. This little brat will definitely become the most dazzling new star in future star territory, Gui Zhu thought to himself. Chapter 1776. That's right, young boy. While waiting for the seven-colored radiant light to return, Gui Zhu suddenly asked, "This old master noticed that you seem to have studied pills quite a bit. Could it be you also know alchemy?" Although the two of them had only harvested the divine nirvana fruit and demon-melting mushroom so far, Yang Kai was always able to describe the spirit pills these two herbs could be used to refine, and he also knew how to preserve them in detail. This made it easy for Gui Zhu to connect the dots. Yes. Yang Kai nodded, not trying to deny it. Oh. Gui Zhu looked at Yang Kai in surprise. In just 30 to 40 years, you being able to grow from the saint realm to the third-order origin returning realm is already enough to surprise this old master, but you still have time to study alchemy. Aren't you afraid you won't be able to master it? Yang Kai chuckled and replied, "My original intention in studying alchemy is to assist my cultivation. I have never given up on my pursuit of the martial Tao." Good, Gui Zhu nodded in approval. Ghost looked at him approvingly. The Tao of alchemy, artifact refining and array formation, although its power is unfathomable, compared to the Tao of martial arts, there is always a little bit of difference. As a cultivator of my generation, the pursuit of the martial Tao is naturally the most important task, and the rest can only be used as support. Gui Zhu spoke earnestly, so Yang Kai naturally nodded. But that being said, if you can achieve something in these three territories, it will still be a great achievement. Gui Zhu was very satisfied with Yang Kai's attitude and smiled slightly before asking curiously, "Tell this old master, what kind of pills can you refine now?" Hearing this question, Yang Kai thought about it seriously. Finally, he said solemnly, "Since senior has asked, this junior will not conceal it. This junior is now an Origin King grade alchemist and can refine Origin King grade spirit pills." As soon as these words fell, Gui Zhu's body shook and he stared blankly at Yang Kai, unable to speak for a long time. "Senior." Yang Kai laughed dryly. Gui Zhu's reaction was within his expectations. After all, how many Origin King grade alchemists were there in the entire star territory? Which one of those alchemists wasn't famous throughout the world? Which one of them didn't have white hair? At Yang Kai's age, it was simply impossible for him to become an Origin grade alchemist. Gui Zhu was silent for a while before taking a deep breath and asking in a trembling voice, "Are you joking?" He thought that Yang Kai was just teasing him. She had been staring at Yang Kai just now. He also wanted to observe the changes in his expression. However, he didn't see any trace of a joke on Yang Kai's face. He immediately realized that Yang Kai's words might be true. No. Yang Kai shook his head. "You're really an Origin King grade alchemist?" Gui Zhu exclaimed in surprise. He immediately turned his head and looked around, as if he was afraid that his voice would be heard by others. How could this junior joke about this kind of thing? Although I have only refined a few Origin King grade spirit pills, I have still refined some. According to the classification of alchemists in the Star Territory, this junior should be an Origin King grade alchemist. Gui Zhu sucked in a breath of cold air as he stared at Yang Kai like he was some kind of monster. Just how old was Yang Kai? Not only was his cultivation so high, but he had also reached the Origin King grade in the alchemic way. How did he do it? Even if he didn't rest or sleep all these years, it would still be impossible. Unless he could split into several dozen clones to cultivate together, it would be impossible for him to achieve such a feat. Gui Zhu couldn't figure it out. There are only a few people who know that I am an Origin King grade alchemist. Besides the women around me, only Senior knows, so I hope Senior can keep it a secret for me, Yang Kai said with a grin. He had concealed his identity as an alchemist before because his strength was insufficient and he was afraid of being targeted by others. But now, with the improvement of his strength, the exposure of his identity as an alchemist would not only not bring him any trouble, it might even bring him huge benefits. As such, Yang Kai did not intend to hide it any longer. Hearing this, Gui Zhu breathed a sigh of relief and said in a dignified voice, "This old master knows his strength, so naturally, he won't go around announcing it. What's more, this old master doesn't know anyone, so how could he do such a senseless thing? But, boy, why are you telling this old master the truth? Aren't you afraid this old master will be disloyal to you? You should know how attractive an Origin King grade alchemist is to people like me. If I can capture such an alchemist to refine pills for me, improving my strength will naturally be a cinch." Haha, Senior isn't such a person. Yang Kai touched his nose. If I didn't trust Senior, I wouldn't have told you the truth. Besides, between offending an Origin King grade alchemist and befriending an Origin King grade alchemist, which is better and which is worse, Senior must be very clear in his heart. Even if you capture me, I must be willing to refine pills for you. What if there is some kind of poison hidden in the pills I refine? Saying so, Yang Kai winked at Gui Zhu. He had chosen to tell the truth to Gui Zhu after careful consideration, not on a whim. Gui Zhu stared at Yang Kai deeply for a while before suddenly bursting into laughter. Ha ha ha. This old master is deeply honored. I never expected that the little brat this old master would not only have such great cultivation but also become an Origin King grade alchemist. If such a thing were to spread, this old master's face would be filled with glory. Senior's praise is too much, Yang Kai said modestly. So, the great Nirvana pill and demon suppressing pill you mentioned before can both be refined? Gui Zhu asked nervously, his mood surging. The great Nirvana pill could help him improve his cultivation while the demon suppressing pill could suppress his heart demons. Both were of great use to him. His original plan was to go out and find the few remaining Origin King grade alchemists in the Star Territory and ask them to help him refine these pills. However, this would undoubtedly come at a huge price, and he might have to wait many years before he had a chance. After all, which alchemy grandmaster did not have a full schedule? It wasn't as if he could ask them to refine pills just by taking these materials and paying them. This would depend on the other party's schedule. Gui Zhu, who had no way out, was a stranger to this kind of thing, but he had some common sense. With his identity and cultivation, he might have to agree to some harsh conditions, such as helping an alchemy grandmaster kill someone or taking some risks, before he could ask them to take action. In short, the price of asking these grandmasters to take action was something even an Origin King realm master might not necessarily be able to afford. But now, there was an Origin King grade alchemist in front of him who had a deep friendship with him. Gui Zhu almost cried out in joy. He secretly rejoiced in his heart, rejoicing that he had not killed Yang Kai back then, rejoicing that Yang Kai had saved his life and forming a friendship with him, and even more rejoicing that he had taken care of Yang Kai in the severed world. Gui Zhu felt that befriending Yang Kai was the wisest decision he had ever made in his life. The Great Nirvana pill and the Demon Suppressing pill are both Origin King grade spirit pills, so it won't be easy to refine them, but as long as the other materials are gathered, it should be possible to try. Yang Kai thought about it carefully before nodding and replying. What's the success rate? Gui Zhu asked hurriedly. At least 60%. 60%. Gui Zhu sucked in a cold breath as he realized that he had underestimated Yang Kai. Refining an Origin King grade spirit pill was extremely difficult, and the failure rate was surprisingly high. Even the few remaining grandmasters did not dare boast a 60% success rate. Yang Kai was not the kind of person who spoke without thinking. This was something Gui Zhu could see. This little brat had a steady temperament and would not easily say things he was not certain of. If he said 60%, then it was definitely 60%. But Yang Kai suddenly laughed. But what? Gui Zhu's heart clenched. If Senior wants to refine the Great Nirvana pill and the Demon Suppressing pill, this Junior can recommend another person. Her attainments in alchemy are much more exquisite than this Junior's, so if she is the one to refine them, the success rate will be higher. Sigh. Gui Zhu gasped as he stared at Yang Kai incredulously. You know another Origin King grade alchemist? Right. You should have had someone to teach you alchemy. Could it be your honored master? As Gui Zhu spoke, his eyes flashed brilliantly. Yang Kai's honored master was definitely an Origin King grade alchemist, and one who was definitely more powerful than Yang Kai. This kind of person definitely needed to be made friends with. As long as he could establish a relationship with such a person, he would definitely be able to ask him to refine pills for him in the future. How could he be afraid of not receiving benefits? Gui Zhu had secretly made up his mind that after this trip to the Severed World, he would definitely visit Yang Kai's honored master. How many Origin King grade masters wanted to meet such an alchemy grandmaster but had no way to do so? Gui Zhu had not expected to have the opportunity to meet two of them. Gui Zhu's heart almost bloomed with joy. No, Yang Kai shook his head. The person I'm talking about is my senior sister. He was naturally referring to Xia Ningqiang. Although when Xia Ningqiang was brought out from Tongxian realm, her attainments in alchemy were not as good as Yang Kai's. Many years had passed since then. In High Heaven sect, there were countless herbs to practice with, and the true alchemy enlightenment scripture had been passed to Xia Ningqiang. With his little senior sister's special constitution and comprehension ability in alchemy, Yang Kai was confident that her alchemy skills had definitely surpassed his own. Your senior sister is also an Origin King grade alchemist. Gui Zhu was shocked. Good heavens. This family of three actually has 3 alchemy grandmasters. Just how heaven-defying is that? Gui Zhu could hardly imagine what kind of sect this was, to have 3 Origin King grade alchemists at its helm. With such masters, wouldn't the disciples of this sect have no shortage of pills? If this news were to spread, Gui Zhu was certain that the entire territory of Tongxian realm would be in turmoil. Behemoths like Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce, Purple Star, and Sword Union would definitely send people to win over Yang Kai's sect. After all, even these 3 great forces did not all have Origin King grade alchemy grandmasters. Among these 3, only Heng Luo Chamber of Commerce and Purple Star each had one, while Sword Union had none. Chapter 1777. Little senior sister is indeed an Origin King grade alchemist. Yang Kai nodded and admitted. Yang Kai. Gui Zhu suddenly took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice, which cultivation star is your sect located on? Is your sect still recruiting? Do you need an elder with a high cultivation? An honored guest is also fine. If that's not enough, you can just accept some empty title. Gui Zhu was completely unable to remain calm. Although he had always been alone and carefree, only he knew the bitterness of his life. For example, when he wanted to refine a certain pill, there was no one he could ask for help. Another example was when he wanted to enter retreat to cultivate a certain secret technique, no one could guard it for him. Even the materials he needed for his cultivation had to be personally sought out. All these trivial matters wasted a lot of his time. But the Origin Kings of great forces were different. They had high status, and if there was anything they needed to do, all they needed to do was issue an order and countless disciples would rush to complete it for them. All these Origin Kings needed to do was cultivate in peace. So sometimes, Gui Zhu was quite envious of the Origin Kings of great forces. However, if he was really asked to join a great force, he would definitely not be willing. After all, he was not willing to be restrained by others, nor did he want to tie himself to any great force. But if it was Yang Kai's sect, it was completely different. This sect had 3 Origin King-grade alchemy grandmasters. This alone was a fatal attraction to Gui Zhu. Moreover, he found Yang Kai pleasing to the eye. His relationship with Yang Kai was quite good, so he did not feel any sense of rejection towards the sect Yang Kai belonged to. Seeing Gui Zhu's eagerness, Yang Kai couldn't help smiling. He did not expect that Gui Zhu would suddenly have thoughts of joining High Heaven sect, but after thinking about it, it made sense. With his and Xia Ningchang's identities as Origin King-grade alchemy grandmasters, it was not too difficult for them to win over an Origin King to join High Heaven sect. However, Yang Kai was not too keen on this kind of thing. Origin King Realm Masters. High Heaven sect did not have one now. But that didn't mean it wouldn't happen in the future. Yi Shiyun was already a quasi-Origin King, and she was bound to break through to the Origin King realm in the future. All she lacked was an opportunity. However, if Gui Zhu wanted to join, it wasn't impossible. After getting along with each other for a period of time, Yang Kai also saw that Gui Zhu wasn't as sinister and vicious as he appeared on the surface. His aura was ghostly. It was only because of the cultivation method that he cultivated. His thoughts drifted. Yang Kai grinned. Junior's sect is called High Heaven sect on Shadowed Star. It's High Heaven sect's sect master. Yang Kai briefly explained the situation of High Heaven sect to Gui Zhu. When he heard that High Heaven sect was actually founded by Yang Kai himself, Gui Zhu could not help feeling great admiration. After learning that there was not a single Origin King in High Heaven sect, and that there was only one First-Order Origin King who had just broken through on Shadowed Star, Gui Zhu was even more overjoyed. He had thought that a force with several Origin King-grade alchemy grandmasters would not be weak, perhaps even having many Origin King realm masters. If that was the case, him joining would only be icing on the cake, but now it seemed that if he really joined, he would directly become the strongest master in High Heaven sect and even on Shadowed Star. His identity and status were completely different from what he had expected before. This was a supreme existence. As such, Gui Zhu became even more enthusiastic and couldn't wait to ask, Yang Kai, this old master has been alone all his life. After leaving the floating continent, this old master didn't have a place to settle down. How about this old master go to your High Heaven sect? This old master doesn't have any requests, just the title of honored guest elder will allow this old master to enjoy the care of an Origin King-grade alchemist and occasionally refine a few spirit pills for this old master, heh. His words were very direct and honest. Yang Kai laughed. If a character like Senior wants to join High Heaven sect, how could this junior refuse? So it's settled then? Gui Zhu's eyes lit up. Although he knew that Yang Kai would probably not refuse him, when he heard Yang Kai agree, Gui Zhu was still very happy. This way, he would be able to get close to an Origin King-grade alchemist. In the future, as long as he could find the necessary herbs, he wouldn't need to worry about not having someone to help him refine pills. Wouldn't it be simple to improve his strength? Gui Zhu could already imagine the future. He would definitely be able to break through to the peak of the Third-Order Origin King realm in his lifetime and stand at the top of Shadowed Star's territory. It's settled then. Yang Kai nodded happily, but I'm afraid this honored guest elder position doesn't quite match Senior's identity. How about Supreme Elder? Gui Zhu's body shook as he stared deeply at Yang Kai, unable to calm his heart for a long time. Although he had never joined any great force, he knew the difference between an honored guest elder and a supreme elder. Although honored guest elders were also worshipped by the sect, it was only in name and had no real power. Supreme elders were different. Supreme elders were existences with real power, and strictly speaking, their authority was extremely great, only second to that of the sect master. In some great forces, supreme elders were supreme existences who could easily mobilize the sect's materials and disciples. Their words were absolute orders and disciples had to follow them even if they had to go through water and tread on fire. However, being an honored guest elder also had its benefits. When the sect encountered an unresolvable danger, honored guest elders could choose to help or not depending on their own situation, giving them a high degree of freedom. On the other hand, Supreme Elders had to advance or retreat with the sect, living or dying together. Generally, only the person with the highest seniority in the sect had the qualifications to assume the position of Grand Elder. Gui Zhu hadn't expected that Yang Kai would directly give him the title of Supreme Elder. Although the risks he would have to take were greater, the benefits and treatment he would receive were far better. Young boy, since you treat this old master with courtesy, this old master will naturally treat you with sincerity. Whatever this old master says now is nothing but empty words, please wait and see. This old master will make sure your sect's disciples willingly accept his position as Supreme Elder. Gui Zhu quickly declared. He was an old man, but Yang Kai's words had caused his blood to boil, causing him to speak such bold words. Senior is too serious. Since this junior has appointed you as Supreme Elder, naturally he won't doubt you, Yang Kai chuckled. You're still calling me senior? Gui Zhu asked with a grin. Junior greets Supreme Elder. Yang Kai quickly cupped his fists and bowed respectfully. Sect Master is too polite. Gui Zhu also returned the courtesy. From now on, this old master will be a member of High Heaven Sect. I hope Sect Master will take good care of me. If you have any instructions, please don't hesitate. Saying so, the two looked at each other and burst into laughter, as if the two of them had just done something shameful together. After this trip to the Severed World is over, this old master will accompany you back to the sect, Gui Zhu said with a yearning look. Gui Zhu said with a look of yearning. He was very curious about what kind of sect could cultivate a character like Yang Kai. Moreover, since he had chosen to join High Heaven Sect, he naturally wanted to take a look at the sect and see what it was like. That's simple, I'll accompany you when the time comes. This news should indeed be passed back to the sect. Yang Kai nodded. Saying so, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed and he said, Supreme Elder, I suddenly thought of something. What is it? We should act separately. This way, the scope of our search will be greatly increased and the number of good things we can find will also increase. What do you think? Yang Kai had not proposed this before, mainly because although he had a good relationship with Gui Zhu, they were not family, so it would not be appropriate for him to make such a suggestion, lest Gui Zhu misunderstand. But things were different now. Gui Zhu was now a member of High Heaven Sect, so there was no problem with Yang Kai's suggestion. Gui Zhu thought about it for a while before saying, if we split up, the scope of our search will indeed be greatly increased and our harvest will also increase, but there are too many void cracks here. Although this old master can find them most of the time, some are too well hidden for this old master to see. Without you by my side, this old master has no confidence. Just like the situation just now, when the 7-colored radiant light struck, if Yang Kai had not found a place to hide, Gui Zhu would have been swallowed by it, the consequences would have been disastrous. Since I proposed this, there must be a way for Supreme Elder to find these void cracks. Yang Kai smiled triumphantly, full of confidence. Oh! What method do you have that will allow this old master to find these void cracks? Gui Zhu asked in surprise. Yang Kai grinned, I can leave a space mark on you so you can perceive these hidden void cracks. Can you do that? I should be able to, let's try. Yang Kai did not have much certainty. If it were before, he would not have been able to do such a thing, but after swallowing and fusing with the space spiral, his comprehension of the Tao of space had reached a new height, so this proposal was possible. If you can really do it, then it is undoubtedly a good idea, Gui Zhu nodded. After getting Gui Zhu's approval, Yang Kai took a deep breath and pushed his space force. Immediately after, he stretched out his finger and space force began to condense into a spiral shape at the tip of his finger. The next moment, Yang Kai gently tapped Gui Zhu's chest. The spiral of power suddenly erupted and turned into a mark that remained on Gui Zhu's body. Oh, is this space force? Gui Zhu whispered in surprise. Even though he was a second-order Origin King, he could not help being shocked by the strangeness of space force at this moment. Through the mark on his chest, Gui Zhu could clearly feel the fluctuations of space force. These fluctuations were constantly spreading out and immediately giving him feedback on the situation around him. There were a few places where the feedback was different from the others. Guizhu looked towards these places and was surprised to find that there were void cracks in them. One of these places was the hidden void crack around him and Yang Kai. Before this, Guizhu had been unable to discover this void crack and could only infer its shape from the 7-colored radiant light, but now, he could clearly perceive it. It was as if some kind of special perception had been unlocked. Chapter 1778. Is it useful? Yang Kai asked. Although he felt that his idea should be correct, using the fluctuations of space force to sense the existence of space cracks, in the end, this was a secret technique he had used on others, so he wasn't completely sure it would work. It's useful, very useful. Guizhu nodded heavily. This old master can now sense the existence of all the space cracks. There are 3 hidden space cracks nearby, right? Yang Kai nodded and smiled. It seems that my idea was correct. Good, now that this old master's problem has been solved, but, are you sure you'll be fine by yourself? Guizhu asked worriedly. Most of the people who entered here were Origin Kings, and although Shui Yu and Zidong were Origin returning Realm Masters, they were definitely following Ni Guang and Zilong. If Yang Kai was alone, acting here would definitely be risky, and if he encountered some kind of master, he would definitely be attacked. This made Guizhu a little uneasy. No problem. Yang Kai grinned. Supreme Elder, don't forget what kind of power I am proficient in. There are so many space cracks here, it's simply a place tailor-made for me. If I really encounter some idiot, even if I can't beat them, I can still run away. Hearing what he said, Guizhu also nodded. Good, since that's the case, we'll act separately, but we still can't act carelessly. I'll leave something on you, and as long as you and I are within 1,000 kilometers of each other, use it and I'll be able to sense your location. I'll rush to your side as soon as possible. Saying so, Guizhu waved his hand and summoned his 10,000 soul banner before reaching into it and grabbing. The next moment, a yin soul roared fiercely. It was pulled out by Guizhu. This yin soul looked extremely terrifying and had clear facial features. It also exuded an extremely powerful aura, one that was no weaker than a 3rd-order Origin returning realm cultivator. This is a co-soul from this old master's 10,000 soul banner. It's connected to this old master's soul, so I'll leave it to you for now. Guizhu stretched out his hand and placed this co-soul on Yang Kai's shoulder. The next moment, Yang Kai felt a chill coming from his shoulder, but it did not affect him much. He silently sensed for a moment and confirmed that the co-soul was indeed in his body. Yang Kai nodded gently, indicating that everything was in order. Next, they naturally had to wait for the 7-colored radiant light to recede so that they could move freely. When the light of the treasure covered the valley, no one could move. They could only rely on the existence of the spatial cracks to hide. Yang Kai secretly calculated the time. Finally, at a certain moment, a shocking inhalation came from the depths of the mountain valley. Accompanied by the slight tremor of the Medicine Valley, the 7-colored radiant light covering the Medicine Valley receded like a tide. Sect Master, be careful, Guizhu cautioned. Yang Kai nodded and immediately flew off in different directions with Guizhu. After separating from Guizhu, Yang Kai's speed became much faster, even though he had been following Guizhu before. Although Guizhu and Guizhu were safe, Yang Kai needed to constantly remind Guizhu to change directions, so there was a slight delay. However, if he was alone, he did not need to worry about this at all. In the Medicine Valley, medicinal fragrances filled the air, so it was actually very simple to find precious treasures. Following the source of these medicinal fragrances would always lead to gains. The only thing Yang Kai needed to worry about was the existence of the void cracks and the 7-colored radiant light. However, Yang Kai estimated that the 7-colored radiant light that had just retreated would not return for a while, so Yang Kai felt relieved and began to act boldly. After a stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai squatted down happily under the roots of a towering tree and placed a ginseng-like spirit medicine in front of him into his bag. This spirit medicine did not look much different from ordinary ginseng. The only difference was that it was covered in fluorescent light, making it look like a miniature star. Red Star Ginseng, this is really a good place. Yang Kai sighed. Now, all the spirit herbs he obtained were Origin King grade treasures, and all of them had long since gone extinct. If they were used to refine Origin King grade spirit pills, they would definitely be enough to make Origin King realm masters go green with envy. Yang Kai was about to break through to the next realm, so he would need some pills to cultivate in the future. This trip to the Severed World had provided him with such a rare opportunity to collect herbs, so of course, Yang Kai would spare no effort. After another half stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai was already 300 kilometers away. He frowned as he looked at the spirit grass in front of him and the scattered soil around it, secretly cursing himself for being too late. The spirit medicines that grew in this place had already been harvested by someone else. The only spirit grass left behind had just grown and was not mature enough, so even if it was harvested, it would be useless. It seemed that the cultivator who had come here before had not killed the goose that laid the golden eggs. This person had simply taken away the mature spirit grass and left behind this seedling, leaving behind an opportunity for future generations. Yang Kai did not know who this person was though, so he slowly shook his head and did not think too much about it, continuing to follow the medicinal fragrance. Time passed by, and after another stick of incense worth of time, Yang Kai finally had some gains. Although the spirit medicines he collected were not as good as the divine nirvana fruit or the demon melting mushroom, they were still priceless treasures. It should be almost time, right? Yang Kai muttered to himself. According to his previous estimate, the interval between each breath of the 7-colored radiant peacock was about half an hour. If this calculation was correct, then the 7-colored radiant light would soon cover the mountain valley again. However, Yang Kai did not know if his guess was correct as it still needed to be verified. For the sake of caution, Yang Kai did not dare to act recklessly, instead paying attention to the location of the void cracks while continuing to search. At this moment, Yang Kai turned his head and looked in a certain direction. At this moment, he noticed that there was a life aura about 30 kilometers away rapidly approaching him. Carefully perceiving this aura, Yang Kai found it to be quite familiar, immediately calling out in surprise, "Her, why is it her?" Thinking so, Yang Kai had no intention of evading and instead moved in the direction of the approaching person. A moment later, he finally saw a figure not far in front of him. Yang Kai called out, "Senior Luo." Luo Lan had also discovered Yang Kai's tracks long ago, so she had come straight here. After all, in order to investigate the surrounding void cracks, she was constantly releasing her divine sense. Luo Lan pursed her lips and smiled, increasing her speed greatly. "Wait!" Yang Kai suddenly shouted. Luo Lan immediately stopped and asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Is there a void crack in front of me?" Yang Kai nodded, "Yes, if you take another 5 steps forward, you'll touch it." Luo Lan's pretty face paled as she couldn't help feeling some lingering fear, turning her eyes towards a certain spot in the void. "It's here, right? Ian, you just need to circle around from both sides," Yang Kai instructed. Luo Lan moved cautiously, circling around in a large circle before arriving beside Yang Kai and saying, "Many thanks, if it weren't for your reminder just now, I'm afraid I would have been beheaded." "It's a trivial matter, Senior doesn't need to mention it," Yang Kai smiled lightly. "By the way, why are you here alone?" Luo Lan looked at Yang Kai and asked curiously. She had clearly seen Yang Kai enter the Medicine Valley with Gui Zhu before, but now, Gui Zhu was nowhere to be seen. "That's what I wanted to ask," Yang Kai chuckled. "I acted separately from Senior Gui Zhu so that everyone could reap some benefits, but Senior Luo, why aren't you with Senior Ni?" "It's the same," Luo Lan smiled. Luo Lan said with a smile, "If I follow him, I won't be able to obtain anything good. Rather than that, I might as well take a risk. Although there are some gains, it seems that the reason I haven't had any accidents so far is due to my good luck. If it weren't for Yang Kai's reminder just now, she would have definitely run into that void crack, and the consequences would have been disastrous." Thinking about how she might have passed by countless void cracks without noticing them, Luo Lan broke out in a cold sweat. While the two were talking, another breath came from the depths of the Medicine Valley. Having experienced the same thing before, how could Yang Kai and Luo Lan not know what to do next? Sure enough, the timing is correct, Yang Kai thought to himself. It seems that his previous inference was correct. Every time the divine bird breathed, the interval between each breath was about half an hour. While he was thinking, Luolan looked around, trying to find a place to hide, but as far as her eyes could see, there were no cracks visible to the naked eye, so in desperation, she could only turn her eyes to Yang Kai. She didn't panic though. After all, there was still a hidden void crack here that she could use to avoid the 7-colored radiant light. It was just that she couldn't find it. "Senior, this way." Yang Kai didn't hesitate and quickly beckoned to Luolan before standing behind the void crack. However, in the next moment, Yang Kai's expression became strange. What's wrong?" Luolan, who was standing in front of Yang Kai, saw his expression change and quickly asked. "This void." Yang Kai wore an embarrassed expression. "It seems to be a little small." "Small?" Luolan was stunned for a moment before quickly realizing what Yang Kai wanted to say. If the void crack was small, there wouldn't be much space for the two of them to hide. If a man and a woman squeezed together, there may be some inevitable physical contact. Thinking so, Luolan's expression also became slightly awkward. Although she was many times older than Yang Kai, she was still a woman, and her appearance was that of a woman in her 30s. "It doesn't matter. It's just for a while." Saying so, she moved closer to Yang Kai, and for a moment, the distance between them was less than a meter. Looking around, she pointed to Yang Kai and asked, "Can I stand here?" Yang Kai shook his head. Luolan gave a hollow laugh, realizing that this void crack might really be very small. At that moment, the 7-colored radiant light quickly struck again, covering the entire Medicine Valley. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived behind Yang Kai, passed through the void crack, and pushed forward like an angry horse. Chapter 1779. "Senior, your position is still very dangerous, please forgive me," Yang Kai suddenly said in a deep voice before reaching out, grabbing Luolan's waist and dragging her into his arms. Caught off guard, Luolan had no time to resist and fell into Yang Kai's arms. "Ah!" she exclaimed as her brow furrowed subconsciously and she pushed her Saint Chi fiercely. "Senior, check your back," Yang Kai said quickly before Luolan could take action in anger. Luolan was startled and quickly released her divine sense to investigate the situation behind her. After a quick glance, her beautiful face couldn't help paling. Less than an inch behind her, the 7-colored radiant light was flowing past, leaving only a small space. If Yang Kai hadn't pulled her back just now, half of her body would have been enveloped by the 7-colored radiant light at this moment. With the terrifying power of this light, her fate was easy to imagine. Even at this moment, her position was in imminent danger as the 7-colored radiant light that had spread across the void seemed like it would touch her body at any moment. Shuddering, Luolan finally understood what was going on. She also knew that Yang Kai wasn't deliberately taking advantage of her and had simply been forced to do so. Quickly dispersing her Saint Chi, she said awkwardly, "I'm sorry, I overreacted." "It's fine." Yang Kai shook his head and frowned secretly. He was also having a headache right now. Although the hiding space created by the void crack here was just enough to accommodate him and Luolan, the current situation made both of them feel very uncomfortable. The two of them were almost face to face at this moment, their bodies pressed against each other. Yang Kai could clearly feel Luolan's soft breasts pressing against his chest, the amazing elasticity and the two small protrusions on her chest causing him to feel somewhat restless. Especially when Luolan spoke. It was almost as if she was breathing in his direction. If someone who didn't know the truth saw this scene, they would likely think that Yang Kai and Luolan were engaged in some kind of shady business, but in fact, both of them were suffering. Yang Kai was a little better. After all, he was a man. Although he felt a little uncomfortable, after calming his mind and clearing his mind of desires, he didn't feel too uncomfortable. He then thought about Su Yang and Xia Ningchang in his mind and dispelled all these distracting thoughts. After a while, his expression returned to normal. On the other hand, Luolan's face gradually became redder and redder, her fair and slender neck glowing with a dark red light, causing one's imagination to run wild. As Yang Kai hugged her, her delicate body stiffened, but because of her nervousness, she began to tremble. She had never thought about it. This time's encounter had allowed her to have such intimate contact with a junior like Kai Yang. This was something that had never happened before. That sturdy chest, broad arms, and the masculine scent that was so close to her were like a flood and a fierce beast attacking her mind, making it impossible for her to remain calm. Her cheeks burned as if they were on fire. She was certain that her face was extremely red. Blushing like this in front of a junior. Luolan was so embarrassed that he wished he could find a hole to crawl into. She would never come out. When she thought about how the 7-colored radiant light would take at least half an hour to recede, Luolan felt like she was sitting on pins and needles and felt uncomfortable all over. She couldn't help twisting her body. "Senior, you don't move around." Yang Kai smiled bitterly. He had just dispelled the distracting thoughts in his heart and was able to maintain his composure, but Luolan's actions made all his previous efforts go down the drain, especially when he felt the 2 small protrusions pressing against his chest harden. Hearing Yang Kai say this, Luolan became even more embarrassed. Luolan was so embarrassed that she lowered her head and buried it in her chest. "I'll turn around." After a moment of silence, Luolan suddenly suggested softly. The 2 of them facing each other like this was simply too awkward. If she turned around, the situation would be somewhat alleviated. Yang Kai nodded and loosened his grip on Luolan's waist. Luolan carefully turned around, lest she touch the 7-colored radiant light that was so close to her. After a while, she turned around and faced Yang Kai with her back. Yang Kai immediately found a new problem. When they were facing each other, he could only feel the majesty of Luolan's chest, but now he couldn't feel the other party's soft touch and amazing elasticity. But her round buttocks just happened to be pressed against his lower body. Her round buttocks were firm, and the touch was absolutely first class. Luolan obviously noticed this too, but after turning around, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning and completely froze in place, not daring to move at will. Time passed by, and the 2 of them felt like years. "Senior." Yang Kai suddenly spoke. "Huh?" Luolan was startled and her whole body trembled. In this awkward atmosphere, Yang Kai suddenly speaking really shocked her, especially when Yang Kai's breath brushed against her earlobe as if someone was gently stroking it, making her feel extremely ticklish. "I'll think about it carefully, but I'll leave," Yang Kai said. "Leave?" Luolan was stunned. "Where can you go now?" After stabilizing her mind, she understood that Yang Kai's proposal was obviously to protect her purity and reputation, and she couldn't help feeling warm inside. She secretly felt that this little brat was pretty good, not taking advantage of her and instead remaining calm, which was quite commendable. But now that the entire Medicine Valley was covered by the 7-colored radiant light, Yang Kai had nowhere to go. "Into the void crack," Yang Kai replied. "Into the void crack." Luolan was surprised. Although she knew that Yang Kai was proficient in the Tao of Space, she didn't know how profound Yang Kai's attainments in the Tao of Space were, so when she heard Yang Kai say this, her first thought was that it would be dangerous. If they couldn't find a way out after entering, they would definitely be trapped inside. Yang Kai nodded. "This place can accommodate 1 person to hide in, but for 2, hey, it's a bit too crowded." "But, are you sure you can come out from there?" "I can come out," Yang Kai nodded. Yang Kai nodded. He had already traveled through the void once before, so how could he not have confidence in this kind of thing? However, if the place he came out of wasn't the Medicine Valley, but somewhere else in the Severed World, his losses would be huge. The only way was to wait for a while before tearing space and returning to the void. However, Yang Kai didn't want to explain this too much to Luolan. After all, the relationship between the 2 of them wasn't very close. Luolan was silent for a while before whispering, "In fact, you don't have to take such a risk, we can just stay here for a while and wait for the 7-colored radiant light to dissipate." Since Yang Kai was considering her innocence, she certainly didn't want Yang Kai to take too much risk. "Many thanks for Senior's kindness, but I'll be going now." Yang Kai smiled and said before preparing to escape into the void crack, but before he left, he suddenly thought of something and said, "By the way, Senior, this junior wants to give you something." "What is it?" Luolan asked curiously. As soon as her voice fell, Yang Kai reached out and gently tapped her shoulder. "Good luck, Senior." Yang Kai said before his figure disappeared into the void crack, disappearing in the next moment. The sudden emptiness behind her caused Luolan to be slightly absent-minded, but after a moment, she moved back a little to make herself safer. It wasn't until now that she had the time to check what Kai Yang had given her. Using her divine sense to investigate her shoulder, Luolan exclaimed, she didn't know why, but when she used her divine sense to investigate the place where Yang Kai had just touched, she could clearly feel the surrounding space force fluctuations and perceive the existence of the hidden void cracks around her. She finally understood what kind of gift Yang Kai had given her. With this gift, she could travel unimpeded through the severed world and no longer have to worry about encountering the hidden void cracks. Luolan was ecstatic. Thank you. Although she knew that Yang Kai wouldn't be able to hear her thanks, Luolan still thanked him for the sake of peace of mind. This encounter allowed her to thoroughly understand what kind of person Yang Kai was and how much potential he had. No wonder young master Jiyu Jian admired Yang Kai so much. It turned out that he had such charm and ability. In the past, Luolan's attitude towards Yang Kai had been good because of Jiyu Jian and because she wanted to borrow his space force, but now, even without these factors, Luolan would not underestimate Yang Kai just because his cultivation was not yet at the origin king realm. This little brat's character was not bad and he had great potential, so befriending him was definitely a good choice. She might need his help in the future. Thinking so, Luolan secretly made up her mind that after returning to Azure Tree Star, she would take good care of Yang Kai's palace on Twin Shark Island. Inside the void, Yang Kai stood alone. Leaving a space mark on Luolan's body so she could perceive the existence of the void cracks was not because Yang Kai was obsessed with her. From the beginning to the end, he had never had any thoughts about Luolan. He only felt that as long as Luolan was safe and strong, his palace and cross-cultivation star space array on Azure Tree Star would be protected. What's more, leaving behind a space mark was as easy as lifting a finger for him. There was no loss at all. Since that was the case, why not? After entering the void, Yang Kai did not stay in place and instead began searching around. In any case, the 7-colored radiant light would not return for half an hour, so Yang Kai had plenty of time to search for real space spirit crystals in the void. This way, he would not have to waste any time waiting. However, when he went out, he would have to determine his position so he wouldn't accidentally run out of the Medicine Valley. For this reason, Yang Kai deliberately left some traces in the same place to prevent such a thing from happening. If he really couldn't find them, he would return to the place where he and Luolan separated. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,